And we have many people here. Here's because you may leave at different times. Everyone here in this room, but especially up here, really value the voice of our teachers and everyone that are in this room. So thank you for showing up, not just physically, but in the conversation. We would request that you model for our students and our community honoring the 2 minutes so we can get through everyone's comments and hear them. And this is how we would like you to show agreement to allow us to continue to run an effective meeting. So with that, we will kick it off with Ben Reed.
Math Department, Issaquah High School. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. I'm here to share data from a survey I sent to all certificated staff members at our 4 high schools. I emailed the results to you yesterday for your convenience. At least 34% of all high school certificated staff members believe it would be harmful to our students to align courses across the district with common syllabi, grading categories, weighting, and recovery opportunities. At least 30% of our certificated staff members believe it would be harmful to students to remove minuses from the grading scale and allow teachers to elect to remove pluses.
Nancy, sorry, 1 second. Can you check the mic for me?
So, oh, thank you. All right. Was I loud enough or should I start over?
You're okay.
Okay. At least 39% believe it will be harmful to our students to provide recovery opportunities for all assignments and assessments below 90%, which have a significant impact on student grades. In total, no less than 43% of high school certificated staff believe that one or more of these policies will be harmful to our students. I want to be clear on 2 things. These percentages are the percentages of all certificated staff, not the people who responded to my survey. The actual percentages are likely higher. Also, I chose the word harmful very intentionally, and in my survey and wording tonight, I use that with a lot of gravity. This is not about personal preference. It's not about workload or general dislike for the policy. This is about genuine concern for harm for our students. The information from this survey demands a better plan from the district. I urge the board and the district to reevaluate the implementation of these policies until appropriate steps are taken. It would be unconscionable to implement these policies with a significant percentage of our education professionals concerned that this rises to the level of harm. The board and the district must take the time
We
to
need
form
you to
a...
wrap up.
I thought I was kind of interrupted a little bit. Sorry. Okay. The board and district must take the time to form a committee involving all stakeholders, provide this committee with the time and proper tools to conduct research, collect reliable data from our learning community, and make well-informed decisions that move the mission of the Issaquah School District forward with fidelity. Thank you.
Next is Colleen Ball.
My name is Colleen Ball. I'm a math teacher at Issaquah High School and a member of the IHS graduating class of 2018. As such, I have the unique perspective of someone who has both recently been a student and witnessed the considerable shift in academic expectations and student behavior. In my time at Issaquah, there were almost no recovery options and never to raise a grade to an A. While I do think a degree of recovery, such as allowing students to retake for up to a passing grade, has merit, diluting the academic experience with complete grade recovery across the board is only doing them a disservice. In college, retakes are non-existent. You're expected to know the material the first time around, and if you don't, it is your responsibility to adjust moving forward, not looking back. The same expectation is held for those moving into trades or career paths. Allowing students the ability to recover all significant grades for up to an A is giving them an unrealistic expectation around how much control they'll have over mistakes in their future. Similarly, making recovery options so ubiquitous removes productive failure from students' repertoire. The stakes in high school are objectively lower, and therefore students need this time to experiment with failing forward before they enter into an environment where they won't be given that same grace to try again. These proposed changes are lowering the standard we expect from teachers rather than gradually increasing them to reflect their growth towards an independent future. During my time at Issaquah, I felt challenged by the standard my teachers held me to because I knew that I had to engage with the material in a meaningful way in order to succeed on my assessments the first time. To contrast, in my classes today, I commonly hear statements like, "This time doesn't matter, I'm just going to retake it," about mastery checks. Students should not be going into assessments already thinking about their redo opportunity. This manner of complacency will hurt them the first time they're made to do something challenging that can't be redone or pushed off to a later date, be that a college exam or giving a haircut. If we are so concerned with student mental health, we should not be setting them up to expect a system of support that will not exist after graduation. High school should be preparing students for the future, and I believe it did that for me, but because of my exposure to productive failure. The pressure students are feeling won't magically go away after they graduate and will instead be exacerbated as they go into their next life stage, expecting to be able to fix every mistake because they simply aren't equipped to recover from failure.
Thank you. Gwen Lloyd?
I'm Gwen Lloyd, and I'm a teacher at Skyline in Humanities. And I feel as though the respect of my professional judgment has been stripped away with the current proposals. First, I'll address allowing retakes for students who score below 90% on culminating assessments. I'm told this comes from mastery-based grading and grading for equity, but also that we're not considering going to those systems. In those systems, students do not get credit for effort or for homework or for work that's done towards the mastery. Only the mastery is graded, only the end result matters. In that environment, retakes make sense. In our balanced grade books that honor the learning process and give credit for participation and hard work, we authentically reflect the combination of a student's efforts and achievements. And in these grade books, allowing for retakes up to 90% amounts to nothing more than grade inflation. Additionally, I looked at last year's grade book, and even a single retake of any culminating assessment under 90% would have amounted to over 91 hours of regrading work. I'd like to know where that time is coming from the time I spend creating engaging lessons or working on scaffolding my lessons for those learners furthest from educational justice, from my professional development, book studies, and time I spend becoming a better educator. 91 hours of regrading. Next, I'd like to address the proposal of identical syllabus and policies across high schools. This is an example of equity versus equality. The proposal would have us achieve equal syllabi with no regard for equitable practices or outcomes, and would supplant my professional judgment about what is best for my students with a directive from the district in direct conflict with the idea that every student has unique strengths and struggles and that we should meet every student where they are at. We have very different populations at each school. Why demand that all, for example, World History 3 teachers have identical syllabi? What is the value in that? My syllabus builds in grace, provides options, and gives students opportunities to succeed. But you want to replace it with what we have to assume will be some sort of a compromise. A compromise I will not feel professionally comfortable deviating from in any way, which means I won't be giving my students the grace they currently get. This is equality standing in the way of equity.
Thank you. Christy Boas?
Good evening and thank you. My name is Christy Bowes, and this is my 17th year in the Issaquah School District. I teach high school English at Skyline and have done so in core classes, electives, and the IB program. Before my teaching career, I was in the corporate sector for 13 years, and I recognize a bottom line strategy when I see one. The proposed recovery and collaboration plan for the 24-25 school year is exactly that. While dressed in an equity standard, the district intends to boost graduation rates and GPA scores for the students. I'm here to discuss two items. One, my absolute frustration, and most importantly, the inevitable inequity for learning that this will cause the students of Issaquah. First, let me say as an employee that I have never been more disappointed in my leadership than I am right now. By implementing the proposed plan, the board is saying that educators that you have hired do not have the professional wherewithal to make best practice decisions regarding the content in their students. It is belittling, condescending, and states that there is no trust between the board and the teachers. But most importantly, the proposed plan will create more inequity for students who are furthest away from educational justice. You mentioned that you want students to learn and embrace their identity However, creating a policy where the narrative that 90% is the ultimate goal for success negates what educators attempt to instill in their students, that critical thinking and problem solving are the key to learning, not the grade. It is my experience educating students who struggle to succeed in a traditional high school setting has taught me that grades are not every student's external motivational element. Therefore, they will still fail to find success. Students need teachers who care about them and not only what the grade that they earn. I am demanding that you reconsider the must-haves in your recovery plan. Teachers are willing to have discussions using our collective professionalism and the years of experience, not arbitrary and ineffective formulas. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Arthur Gao?
Hi, my name is Arthur Gao. I'm a junior at Issaquah High School, and I'd like to share my thoughts on the new grading procedures. When justifying the new policies pursuant with EL 12, board members cited the lived experience of students. However, in their research, the board never directly asked students whether they supported these changes, and it shows. No student would disagree with your claim that school is stressful, and it may very well be that this is due to the pressure to attain high grades, but the policy does little to change this. Instead of being able to set their own realistic goals in accordance with their capabilities and ambitions, all students will now be held to the standard of a perfect 4.0 GPA. The difference between 89% and 90% used to be just a slightly smaller GPA, the difference between a 3.57 and a 3.53. It is now the difference between meeting and failing to meet the standard. Additionally, if we consider the grade inflation this will cause, one subpar grade will have a larger impact on the percentile range a student's GPA is in, as the range of GPAs will be smaller. As a student myself, I can assure you this will increase stress, but this is only one of the numerous factors that will cause student stress to skyrocket. We will be more stressed when our school's reputation among colleges is diminished due to an academically uncompetitive environment. We will be more stressed when we are continually working on assessments 3 months after the due date. We will be more stressed when we have to take remedial classes at college because we were inadequately prepared. We'll be more stressed when we must rely on outside testing to demonstrate our academic competency to college. We will be more stressed when we see our hard work and diligence receiving the same outcome as someone who tries to game the system, as we all saw during COVID. In previous communications, the board has claimed to value student input. I hope you make good on that promise. Thank you.
Thank you. Maris Menenberg?
Can I just start or?
Introduce yourself and where you go.
Hello there, my name is Maris Venenberg. I'm a freshman here at Issaquah High School, joined today by fellow students Rex Garner and Caitlin Rabone in sequential order after me. We are here in solidarity with our teachers to provide our opinions on the recent additions to the EL 12 policy. First of all, changes with such policies with such weight need to be more than publicly accessible right now. It is the board's obligation to publicly broadcast them because the community cares about these policies of such impact, especially for students when it regards grades. We want to address two main things Sherry Cox said about EL 12 at the April 25th board meeting. One, that it was, quote, likely, end quote, that the district would remove all minuses from the grading system, and two, the recovery policy. First, if the district removes minuses, but keeps pluses in the system, it directly inflates grades while student performance stays the same. To truly remove stress points and not inflate grades, please consider removing pluses as well. Secondly, and more concerningly to me, is the recovery policy. Sherry referenced to the example of, quote, a student who earns a 90% and really wants a 4.0 but just can't, end quote, to justify this addition. We all want 4.0s, right? But we have to earn them. When anyone can recover things impactful to their grade several times over for an A, the A earned without the recovery procedure becomes absolutely meaningless. This labels these two students the exact same, which is not only inaccurate, but unethical and wrong. Because reaching mastery is not just the understanding of content. It is learning how to manage deadlines and how to work hard to reach standards within them. We choose the classes we take, and I want my school to teach me that my hard work to get all of this, to get every part of mastery right, will be distinctly rewarded. Thank you.
Thank you. Rex Garner.
Hello, ISD School Board. My name is Rex Garner, and I'm a freshman at IHS. And I'm joined by my friends Caitlin and Maris. After having read the EL12 policy and listening to old board meetings, I have found two objectives this document attempts to achieve that I would like to focus on. Those being, 1, to lower the mental health strain felt by students, and 2, to lessen the income disparity among students and their families. While we can all agree these are well-intended objectives, I believe that the proposed implementations of this policy will further exacerbate the two primary objectives it seeks to achieve. As alluded to before by Maris, this will cause grade inflation. Eliminating GPA is a distinguishing characteristic of students from IHS who apply to college. This neutralizing of academic differentiation will drive students to find other ways to distinguish themselves on college applications, as GPAs at IHS will have little meaning to admissions officers. The two most likely avenues are, 1, by taking harder classes like AP, IB, and honors courses. The rigor of these classes are not meant for everyone, particularly if 90% is the new standard of mastery. Enrolling in more challenging courses that may not have been on a student's prior academic journey will cause increased stress and unnecessary strain on mental health as these students force themselves into a path that may not be right for them. 2, in order to distinguish oneself among these new changes, one will also have to take part in more extracurriculars like organized sports, music lessons, clubs, and volunteering. These activities, while good in nature, take away a child from their family and give him or her less free time. Let it also be reminded that these activities are not free and will only put more of a financial burden on a student's family. If our old problem was students who couldn't afford tutors having an advantage over students who can't, then we have replaced it with a new problem of kids who can't afford these activities having an advantage over the kids who can't. In summary, the unintended consequences of EL12's proposed policies will increase, not decrease, the issues you are trying to solve. Thank you.
Thank you. Caitlin Rabone.
Hello, I'm Caitlin Rabone, IHS freshman. Thank you for considering my interpretations, my perspective on the EL12 policy interpretations. Having attended a private school most recently, where class rankings were based on percentage grades, I recognize the mental health perils of striving for perfection. Arriving at public school, I found a sense of balance and appreciation for our existing grading structure, allowing me to further excel competitively in extracurriculars. Professions require rigor to avoid major consequences like data leaks, poor technology go-lives, investment losses, or casualties without attention to detail. Personally, I have medical aspirations that demand a learning environment that promotes diligence without reliance on unlimited retakes that could harm my career and understanding. We propose department-driven, limited retakes, and graduated percentage recovery on smaller assessments like quizzes before any major test or essay, similar to how professionals leverage mock trials or surgeries and text testing before go-live. Recent meetings asserted removing minuses to reduce stress, but seemingly targets A- and B- kids to solve mental health issues. As the plan is refined, perhaps the lower tier, being below 80, of the grade spectrum should be focused on and then move upward in a phased approach. A one-size-fits-all approach could unduly harm students who feel they must exceed their current achievements to distinguish themselves from lower 4.0 students. One director's favorite quote, and Dr. Seuss's "Oh, the places you'll go," states, "And you will succeed? Yes, you will indeed. 98 3/4% guaranteed," and closes with, "Kid, you'll move mountains." For us to move mountains, we need not a guarantee, but a way to build resilience for what the future brings. Teachers and students alike, along with over 500 others who have signed the EL12 petition, welcome the opportunity to participate in future sessions that shape our future. For without you, we cannot move mountains. Thank you.
Thank you. Alyssa Kiesler.
Good evening. My name is Alyssa Giesler, and I teach English at Issaquah High School. My colleagues will share later some of the best practices for recovery that we have developed over the past few years to align with EL 12, but I would like to take a moment to share my experience with standards-based or mastery-based grading and multiple revisions for major assignments and what I learned from it as a teacher. During my first 2 years of teaching, my grading system allowed students who received an 85% or lower on major assessments the option to revise at least once for up to full credit. My thought process at the time was that this would encourage students who struggled with writing to apply the feedback they got on their essays immediately to see how to improve their writing. I naively thought that they would intrinsically start to apply that learning to their future writing. However, I noticed the opposite effect taking place. Instead of focusing on the writing process, and more importantly, the critical thinking that goes into it, students would opt to rush through their drafts at the last minute, knowing that they could just redo it later for a better grade. With each new writing task we did, whether it was a formal process essay or a short paragraph, the students continued to make the same mistakes throughout the year, mistakes that ultimately carried into the next year and level of English. This type of grading placed importance on the grade rather than the learning process, and I believe it was a disservice to my students. It also goes against every mission for Issaquah, Liberty, and Skyline High Schools. Our department has implemented some proactive intervention strategies that allow us to see exactly where students struggle from the start and offer feedback and interventions before they get to the final product, which ultimately more accurately demonstrates their best effort and ability. These students have really fantastic ideas to share in their writing, and the best way to help them explore these ideas in their fullest form is to help them engage in the writing process, not wait for a chance to do a hasty revision after the fact. And having changed my approach to the grading system and that writing process, I have seen a massive improvement in their writing and their thinking skills. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jana White.
Good evening, I'm Jana White. I am an English teacher with 25 years of experience in the classroom. I'm concerned about the directive for recovery and mastery up to 90%. First, the policy is not in adolescents' best interest. It will negatively impact the successful strategies that we already use to support students' growth. For example, when we teach essay writing, we provide time in class for students to work. Each day, students have a task to complete. By scaffolding these individual steps in the process, we provide targeted, meaningful feedback that students can immediately use and apply on low point assignments. Please see the visual we have provided. The recovery option will hamstring our ability to support students' learning. Developmentally, adolescents need us to hold them accountable for their engagement, redirecting them and helping them learn each day. When there is an option to recover on an assignment after the final assessment, students are more likely to disengage during class, put forth less effort, and procrastinate. This is human nature. The 90% policy lacks real practical knowledge about working with teenagers and the student-teacher dynamic. Behavior is intrinsically tied to learning because learning is a process over time. It is not a product. Second, the plan disregards well-documented research by John Hattie, a guru in his field about visible learning, on feedback itself. The research shows that effective feedback has significant impact on learning, and that formative assessments like pre-tests in foreign language, mastery checks in math, and ongoing feedback during the writing process has the most impact on learning because teachers intervene and adjust their instruction. Research also shows that feedback on final assessments is most meaningful when it is applied to the next assignment, like the next essay. This practice encourages students to integrate their learning and use it on a new task rather than fixing a previous assignment. It is also abundantly clear that feedback is most effective when it is not attached to a grade. Our limited instructional time should be spent on high leverage practices.
Thank you. Courtney Gilpin.
Hi, my name is Courtney Gilpin. I teach language arts at Skyline. Something I feel needs particular attention in the matter of the proposed district-wide changes to secondary grading practices is a specific word that is contained in Executive Limitation 12, consistent. Item 1C says grading practices should be consistent across grades and secondary departments. 1D says departmental grading practices should be consistent across schools. Respectfully, I urge all stakeholders in our educational community to resist the conclusion that consistent means identical. Just like equitable does not always mean or does not always manifest as all things being precisely equal. Gradebook categories and their corresponding weights are one of the myriad ways that teachers ensure that their classroom experiences are responsive to the needs of their specific student populations. In my department, certainly when prompted to do EL 12 work, but also just organically all the time, we take the time to discuss our shared gradebook and syllabus policies, not to ensure that on paper we check the box, we seem to be consistent, but rather to ensure we're all operating in good faith and finding equitable ways to serve our specific groups of students. Being in the same building, we can engage in this work as needed, both formally and casually. We've been able to make changes over time, both as individuals and as horizontally and vertically aligned teams, to ensure the policies of our individual classrooms align to our shared educational values and goals. While a few hours in August may be enough for roughly 30 language arts teachers to establish gradebook categories that identically match across the 3 comprehensive high schools, are we going to be given this time yearly so that we can adjust to respond to changing student needs? More to my point, is attempting to develop exact consensus actually necessary to ensuring consistency? If consensus cannot be achieved, will the district be stepping in to mandate the specifics of those identical categories and weights? Is this all simply to allow us to declare that we have achieved consistency at the expense of flexibility and teacher autonomy? Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Deanna Fisher?
Hello, I'm Deanna Fisher. I've worked in education for over 15 years as either a teacher or a counselor, and I'm currently in North Shore as a counselor. I have 2 boys at Issaquah High. During COVID, my boys were 2 of the 1,000 students who left the district to go to either private or homeschool. However, we did decide to come back to Issaquah School District, and the first day back, my boys said the best part about it was the teachers cared about what students were learning. We stayed and have been extremely happy. So when all the teachers are opposed to implementing something like EL 12, this should be a red flag. Let's put it into perspective. Wherever you work, you and your coworkers have gone through years of training, hands-on experience, and built up a great reputation in your community. One day, someone else tells you how you're going to do your job from here on out and doesn't ask you your opinion. And even though you as employees, the experts in your field, know what is best because you live it every day. Many teachers in our district have master's degrees or higher and tons of years of experience, and all teachers and employees are against the initiative. If a business's employees recognize a change will lower the quality of their work and require them to do more work without pay, this will cause many to leave, and those that do stay will be upset about the situation because they aren't being listened to as experts in the field. With upset employees, teachers, you aren't going to have quality work or teaching anymore. When the quality of teaching goes down, people won't want to live here and they'll move away. Then we are all affected by lower property values. This is a top-down model of running a business. Successful businesses are run bottom up. Listening to people who are affected most, employees, teachers, and their clients, patients, students, if EL 12 is implemented, our community will look back and see this was how our district was taken down and the board who implemented, and it won't be remembered in a good way. With our employees, teachers upset, the community is going to feel it, and you are at huge risk for implementing the school bond this fall. I highly recommend you repeal E12.
Matthew Fisher.
Hi there, my name is Matthew Fisher. I'm a junior currently at Issaquah High School. Tonight, I just want to provide a perspective on some of the proposed changes to EL 12. First off, I want to thank the board for engaging with teachers and students listening sessions this past month. At the student listening session, we landed on a great question. What does an A represent? After some reflection, I truly believe that an A represents hard work. As a student, I don't have perfect grades, but I've worked hard for the grades I've received. And I feel that based on my effort in those classes, I've deserved those grades. I believe that making an A easier to achieve, whether that be through extensive recovery policies or by dropping the A threshold to 90%, puts to shame the students who have been and are continuing to work hard in their classes to be prepared and progressively build on their learning. The school board has developed several insightful end statements to define the district vision, and I want to highlight just the first two. The first one, our students will be prepared and eager to accept the academic, occupational, personal, and practical challenges of life in a dynamic global environment. Number two, upon graduation, students will be academically prepared and confident to pursue higher education or specialized career training. I want to ask if we believe that the proposed changes to EL 12 align with the district vision to academically prepare and give our students the confidence to face challenges in the real world. To give this real world context, I looked at the top things that employers are looking for in employees, and two recurring traits came up. First was dependability, and second was work ethic. Also considering that in college, there often isn't flexibility in deadlines, and research suggests that the closer a high school's grading system is to a given college's grading system, the more successful the high school student will be in college. At UW, where a lot of Issaquah school district students go, anything 90%, 95% and up is an A. And lowering our threshold is disconnecting the Issaquah school district from standard college practices. It's important to develop key characteristics in our students, such as work ethic and personal responsibility, to strive to do their very best on the first attempt. Students are prone to procrastination, and rendering our teachers powerless to enforce deadlines destroys the premise of progressive learning in subjects such as math, English, language learning, and others. I want to challenge the district to contemplate if this is the message we want to send to students and teachers, and to reconsider the proposed implementation in light of the district's end vision statements. Thank you for your time.
Robert Fisher.
Hello, my name is Robert Fisher, a junior at Issaquah High School. Today, I would like to express my concerns over the new policies in EL 12. I believe the board has the best intentions for our school district at heart, but I believe that the new policies in EL 12 will not accomplish the desired improvements outlined in the plan. A group of concerned high schoolers started a petition last week about stopping the implementation of new policies in EL 12, and it currently has 537 signatures from students, parents, and community members, demonstrating a significant number of concerned individuals across the district. I first want to talk about the mental health implications resulting from the policy. The new EL 12 policies are to some extent aimed at combating mental health issues in students that are worrying about grades. But while mental health was one of the focuses of this policy, the accumulated stress of backlogged assignments and assessments resulting from flexible deadlines and near infinite recovery work will compound and ultimately worsen students' mental health more than before. Moreover, the point of going to school is to learn and prepare students across the district for higher education and future careers. However, the emphasis on grading policies in EL 12 will contribute to students stressing about maintaining a high GPA instead of focusing on learning the course material. Not only does this hurt our students, but our teachers as well. Because of EL 12, many teachers will have to work long hours redesigning curriculums, making retake tests, and grading all the classworks and assessments. Furthermore, the policy of a uniform syllabus across the district will take away the teachers' freedom to teach students in the way that they feel best and to tailor their classes to their preferred teaching styles to help students. This would effectively undermine their ability to teach in a way that they feel is most beneficial for students and prepare them for the future. Overall, I strongly recommend the board listens to the signees of the petition, the students, the teachers here tonight, and the Issaquah community members advocating for the reversal of the new EL 12 policies. This reversal is imperative for the overall continuing success of our district. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Nancy, were there any others? No. No. Would you do me a favor, John? This is going to be hard. Maybe Bethany will have to help you. But if you would broadcast EL 12, our policy, not monitoring report, onto the screen. And as you do that, while not responding to anyone's public input, I do want to make sure that people understand the language, because language is really important. Just as the word consistent was intentionally chosen, I want everyone in this room to understand and have clarity on what EL 12 is as a policy versus what concerns may be about proposed district implementation. Because those are very distinctly different. And I want to make sure that everyone in this room has a really clear understanding, especially our students and parents. So if you haven't read through EL 12 as the words on the paper, I really, really strongly encourage you, and you can watch as they navigate for how to get to it, so you can see how to get to it yourself. Because it's a really important thing to not have it be where word on the street, because Facebook, social media, as we know, is not always the best or most useful source of information.
Let me just help. So if you go back to the school board page. About us, school board. Right back up to the top, the plus sign, the plus sign. Thank you. Go down. School board, thank you. Plus sign. No, it's okay. I promise. Plus sign. Oh, that's the video. I mean, we could play the video. I think that's all.
Yeah, I do encourage you to watch the video if you haven't seen the video, where you get a real clear sense about the board's visioning about EL 12. If you haven't seen that, I would encourage you to do that.
And go to the plus sign. Go to the plus sign at the top. Oh, why isn't it there? You can just use the search. I don't know what the governance policies are. Hi, Carl.
Okay.
This is great because it looks different on my laptop than on theirs.
I don't know. I see it. It's right above. I don't know why his view doesn't have it.
We need to, it's under governance policies.
If we just go up.
I understand. Leisha, were you not?
No, it's right. It's,
Well,
I have it.
If you, it
It's
looks
here.
different on my laptop.
yeah, I have it up. I was gonna read off it, but I want people to be able to see it as well. It's easier to follow along.
He's there. The
No, no, no,
policy-
no. Click
the
on the policy. EL 12 policy.
Yes.
Yes,
The policy. Yes. The policy.
yes. Thank you.
Promise, yeah.
Wow. Sorry about that, everyone. So I just want to read a couple lines in this, just so people again understand this is the policy as written. So people, I want to reflect to if you're going to come in this room and talk about and refer to, many people refer to policy. So this is the policy. So as said, the board believes that every student should have access to all academic and social emotional learning supports that are necessary for them to achieve their full potential. Grading practices should be equitable and homework should meaningfully contribute to overall student learning. If you go look at number 1, it says ensure that grading practices are equitable and based on a comprehensive and objective review of best practices research. Number 2, ensure that homework practices are equitable and based on a comprehensive and objective review of best practices research. Number 3, solicit regular feedback from stakeholders on grading and homework practices with consideration for overall student workload. Number 4, ensure access to student-driven opportunities to explore non-core options, especially in the areas of CTE, STEM, and fine, visual, and performing arts, providing career-connected learning. Number 5, consider student opinion in academic remediation and acceleration opportunities. Number 6, ensure that opportunities for social emotional learning are embedded throughout the K-12 experience. Number 7, provide adequate access to counseling and mental health supports. And number 8, ensure that special education students have equitable opportunities and necessary supports to reach their full potential in an environment that is welcoming, safe, and as inclusive as possible. There have been no changes to this policy for the past 3 years. to be clear, I think when I hear a reference to policy changes, the policy has not changed. This is really an important distinction for policy versus implementation plan. So I wanted everyone in the room to know this is a policy as written and it hasn't changed. Okay, with that, we wanted to move on to our next item on the agenda. Is there another one?
Can I make a quick comment? No.
No, we closed that already. That's why I made sure it was closed before I did my part. Thank you for that. Feel free to send us an email. We would probably take that. The next item is approval of the consent agenda.
I move the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Nope. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The next item is establishment of the regular agenda, and I want to recommend a amendment to it, and it would be the very first item with board engagements recap. I would request that we modify this from the board will recap breakfast with the board sessions held at Skyline, Issaquah, and Liberty in the town hall to actually reflect the board will recap the linkage we had with the city of Sammamish council. And then we will defer this conversation to later after we have a linkage with IEA.
I can second that.
Are there any other changes?
No, there are no other changes to the agenda.
Oh, I don't think we've never had a motion for the agenda. So if you change it, it's just a change.
Okay. Thank you. So the first. Not that I think anyone wants that right now. The first item on the agenda is our board engagement recap, and start off with reflections on the linkage with Sammamish City Council, and want to give a shout out to our superintendent and her team, and having Martin Turney and Shereen Carver and Tom Mullins take another night out of their schedule to support the work of the district and the board. We are grateful and appreciative, and know that that was an extra thing that wasn't exactly on your plan. So thank you for those really great thorough presentations. So with that, wanted to open up.
I guess I can start. One, it was great to have the connection with the city of Sammamish. I will say, both as an ISD parent and as a resident of Sammamish, it was especially fun for me to have that conversation with my city. I want to share a couple data points that I think are interesting to understand as it relates to ISD's connection specifically with the city of Sammamish. So 38%, almost 40% of our students actually reside in the city of Sammamish, which is a large chunk, obviously, of our student population. So it was nice to share that with the council too. I think Sammamish, oftentimes we think about it as sort of split between it, and it is split between two different school districts. So it was nice to have to be able to have that conversation. Another interesting point too that actually the city shared with us that I think is interesting too is that the high concentration of families in the city of Sammamish that have kids really kind of in that K through 12 range, and that's 53% of families in the city of Sammamish. The average for King County, I believe they said, was 28%. So really heavy population of school age kids there. Had a good, a good dialogue, I would say, around the bond where, we were able to answer some questions around that. I think, and look forward to future dialogue around some of the other topics that we wanted to go a bit deeper on, student mental health, and again, some greater connectivity with the city. But I would say all in all, it was a useful conversation. I look forward to further dialogue with the city of Sammamish.
Thank you. Any others?
I would just say that I think more time was needed for the topics. So and it was good to get information from staff, but it left a little time for council and board discussion between ourselves.
We agree. We did not get to set the agenda as the non-hosting party, but we'll host the next one.
Just a couple comments. Again, kudos to staff for the presentation. I thought the fact that it was tailored so specifically to Sammamish really registered with the council member. So I thought that was fantastic. And it was really kind of our first chance, it felt like, to educate folks on the bond. And hopefully to have an opportunity to clear up what were some misconceptions and begin to have that conversation about what's in the bond, what we're trying to achieve, and what the goals are. So I'm just thankful for that conversation.
Thank you.
I also appreciated the city of Sammamish's Department of Human Services and their sharing of the work that they're doing to support the well-being of the community at large, but in particular the youth. And there's just so much overlap in our partnerships and our work, and it's helpful to know about what we're doing that is a bit different, so we can amplify and provide those references and resources to the community at large.
Yep. And I just want to give a shout out to Mayor Clark and appreciate her and all the council members and Sammamish staff for their partnership. And, I think just like when we left the city of Issaquah linkage, we left similarly like, hey, we want to do this again. We have more work to do together. And I think that collective commitment to maximize tax dollars to the best of our ability to serve our community the best we can together, that amendment clearly came through, and I really appreciated that, and looking forward to that continued dialogue. And next item on our agenda is works in progress.
Great, thank you. So I wanted to let everyone know that the district's Focus, which is a mailing publication, does hit every resident in the district. And so that's focusing on real world learning, career preparation, and some highlights about our innovative efforts that we have a track record and history of success with in our district, a bit about our bond advisory committee work, stories from our students about belonging, and highlights about our strategic plan process. Summer learning is coming up soon, and I wanted to share some highlights about what we're doing at the elementary level. This year, our elementary summer school offering has been reinvented based on feedback and trend data. The program has changed from a 4-week math and reading focus for all enrolled students to a 2-week STEAM summer camp. That will include a 4-week program also selected for additional students that might want more and need more time to progress their learning in the summer. Last year, as a note, we had 201 students registered across 2 different school sites. And this year, we're holding the program at one site, Sunset Elementary, and we currently already have 473 students registered. So I think that the change in the reinvention of the timeline, but also the content, is generating a lot of interest. And the program will run the first session in early July 8th to the 19th, and then July 22nd to August 2nd. I do want to share some continued updates about athletics. And so as a reminder, our middle schools will be adding boys soccer and will not be offering co-ed slow pitch. And so as we look at all of our sports and athletics and opportunities, we are consistently looking where we are adding, but we cannot just add because it does only add and not, consider where we might need to reinvent some of our sports offerings. So we did take a look at our high school sports. And so in addition, what we'll be adding for high schools will be girls badminton in the spring and girls flag football in the winter. And we're also proposing after this analysis to discontinue gymnastics at the high schools, and our athletic directors will be sending a message to families, but they'll also be offering an opportunity to talk about this shift and encourage conversation as a next step. The Athletics and Activities Department did conduct a review of our current athletic program offerings to assess these areas of opportunity and Title IX compliance. And in addition to our internal review, we also utilize different tools to assess our our athletics based on interest as well for our students. We identified the need for this reorganization for girls that are 3 comprehensive high schools, particularly because winter season is where we have the lowest participation for our girls in sports. And of the over 5,000 secondary students that responded to the Title IX interest survey, of which a little more than half were female respondents, we use that as a component to inform our offerings and our assessments. And there are lots of reasons, but I'll take 3 and share them with you for adding flag football and badminton. The KingCo League, which is where our schools are members, offers badminton and will also be offering flag football. And all 8 other league districts offer flag football, and 5 out of 9 of those also offer badminton. So our regulation currently has been allows us to be able to participate in these programs, and this will be a great opportunity. And that allows for our student athletes to have a league schedule with organized rules and postseason opportunities and the ability to compete against other schools in the area. Okay, so number 2, badminton was overwhelmingly requested by students through the Title IX student interest survey to all secondary students. And we currently have active clubs at 2 of our high schools, and it's a low barrier to entry, and it's open to students of all skill levels and all sports backgrounds. And we think about making sure our students develop healthy habits for physical activity and a passion for being able to enjoy activity as an individual and as a team. These are important ways for us to continue to promote that. And then finally, on flag football, there has been growing interest and offers. This offers this additional girls sport in the winter, where our participation, as I said earlier, is currently the lowest for female students. Also, there's a low barrier to entry, and again, open to students of all skill levels and sports backgrounds. As a note too, our gymnastic programs, while have been around for a long time and has a legacy here, it has steadily decreased in participation. And so it's very, very low numbers right now, with just 28 girls participating this year district-wide. And I think that's helpful to just note. And offering different sports will allow greater participation in the season where we have the lowest participation for girls, and allow us to support those shifts and adding new and hopefully increased volume of girls participating in the winter sports season. So we also know that gymnastics has a very high barrier to entry and requires some significant skill development as well to participate. So we're understanding why that might be a limit to growth in the future. But again, we're reaching out to our athletic directors, or our athletic directors are reaching out to families and talking about this and seeing if there's a need for further dialogue as well for this proposal. Continuing with the theme of our schools and our students, I've had several amazing visits this week, and I want to share. On Monday, I was on campus at Gibson Neck with the CEO of the New Teacher Center, a founder of a Incubate and Innovative Learning organization, and then a partner with an organization called Transcend that also does a lot of innovative work with the secondary level of schools. And I was joined by Julie Bamba and Tanya Reichel to discuss the power of student agency, joy, and empowerment that is evident across the campus. It was great to have time with external guests to share and hear our respective impressions about our student experiences. And we got to spend time talking to students, witnessing dialogue between students and collaboration time, as well as talk to teachers directly about why they like to work, what joy they see in their day-to-day time working with students. As a preview, I had an opportunity to meet one of our student reps who will be here and inducted tonight to that work for next year. In addition, I stopped by the ACT program after that and spent some time with Teresa Cowan and the team there, welcoming and seeing the arrival of students. And what's great is I got to witness all the routines and rituals that our students love to. It's a very personalized program, so there are some very specific routines and rituals that our students and our staff engage in as our students arrive. And I got to see all 4 busloads of students come on campus with smiles, and it was a sunny day, so everyone was very happy. And then yesterday I got to spend some time with Director Coyne at Sunset Elementary, Cedar Trails, and Pacific Cascade Middle School, where we saw and started to learn more about some of the evidence that our teachers are, or evidence and examples of our teachers implementing universal design for learning and making sure that there's greater opportunities for our students to express, have choice in what they are learning and how they're learning, but also to express how they're engaging in content and skill development. So that was pretty amazing. And finally, I wanted to share that we've gotten some good news in this past week from the Rotary Club of Issaquah, and I want to thank and appreciate the Rotary Club. Their Community Service Committee awarded 2 grants this week from their spring grant award system. And that was $3,500 to the Voice Mentor Program to support that work, which is our, one-to-one mentoring for students across the district. And also $1,500 to the Nurses Fund. And that is a small portion of the overall amount that they have invested to many different organizations across the community, all of which benefit our students. So it's very numerous and it's incredibly supportive, and we appreciate that very much. So that's it for me right now.
Thank you for those highlights. Don't know how you continue to do all these things and support all the work that we're doing across the district. Any questions for our superintendent? Nope. Okay. Thank you. Our next item is social media lawsuit. We'll let you kick it off.
Great. We have two legal counsel representatives joining us on Zoom, and I want to make sure that we have them. We have both Chris Ryder and Carrie Laufenberg from Keller Rohrbach, and they'll be presenting some information about school districts and social media litigation. And Martin Turney and I will be available to add some additional reflections or analysis on any questions that come up that have implications for district work as well. But we thought this would be a good starting point to hear more about what's happening on this front with social media litigation.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay?
Would it be possible to rotate the screen a little bit for those of us on the end? Thank you.
Great. Can everyone hear me okay?
I guess Carrie and Chris, if you can unmute, I think we're ready for you.
Hi, this is Carrie. Can you all hear me?
Hey, are you guys able to hear us?
Looks like someone's trying to be admitted. Okay.
Heather, are you able to hear Carrie or I?
Chris, Carrie, can you guys talk or turn on your cameras? Because we see they're unmuted, like we heard a pop can opening.
Can you hear us now?
He's trying to.
Are you able to turn on your cameras?
No.
We don't see your cameras, and I don't see that I have the ability
It says.
to do that.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
Okay,
There we
we see
go.
one camera. Okay, can you try and talk so we can see if we can hear you?
Hi, yes, we've been
We can't
talking.
hear you.
Yeah.
Is the volume up in the room?
Is our Zoom connected to the appropriate audio source?
Right, you have to use it, do the little black screen that's on the wall.
Yeah, it's muted. Unmute that speakers, Jeff.
Yeah, your computer is muted. Harry, can you try speaking now?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Oh, wonderful. Good evening.
Good evening. I think this will be thematic that you both can and can't live without certain technology. It's nice to meet all of you. My name is Chris Ryder. I'm joined here with Carrie. We're both attorneys at Keller Rohrbach. We're a national law firm based here in Seattle. And we have had discussions with the superintendent regarding ongoing litigation involving school districts all across the country and social media, of which we are involved. About a year and a half ago, we filed the first lawsuit against some of these large social media companies, and that's Meta for both Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and Google for YouTube, on behalf of Seattle Public Schools. And that litigation has greatly increased. One of our kind of largest practice areas over the last few years has been representing governmental entities. And we kind of specifically entered this space in the Juul litigation, suing both Juul and its parent company, Altria, on behalf of school districts. And really on the heels of that, we kind of got involved in this current litigation where some of our clients started asking us what we could kind of do about social media and its impact on school districts. So I think if we can go into the next slide, we can kind of go over some of the background here. So we started kind of looking into this issue, and we saw, as I'm sure many of you are aware, social media is incredibly popular. Some Pew data from last year shows that 90% of youth ages 13 to 17 use social media. Kind of the 5 companies that are at issue in this lawsuit that I just mentioned, all of their platforms are the most widely used. There's a lot of statistics about, how many kind of hours on end. A lot of kids are using these apps today. We can go to the next slide. And kind of in parallel over the last handful of years, there's been a real growing body of scientific literature kind of linking social media use on the one hand to a whole kind of range of negative mental health outcomes on the other. So there's kind of a wide body now showing that social media use is associated with increased rates of anxiety, depression, low self-esteem, suicidal ideation, attempts, eating disorders. And so we, see this kind of really spans the gamut, unfortunately. If we can go to the next slide. And, this kind of has led to what the Surgeon General and the American Psychological Association have deemed what is a youth mental health crisis. And so now we're at a point where 20% of kids ages 3 to 17 have a mental health disorder. Again, this is largely kind of surrounding around anxiety and depression. And, this is something we've seen kind of growing over the last 20 years. You can kind of see it as that graph. We know this is something that was really on a stark rise even before the pandemic. And again, at the same time, we've seen rates of students and young people using electronic devices and social media has greatly increased. You can see that bottom number on the slide, jumping up to 95% of kids using a cell phone as of 2018. I'm sure that's only higher now. If we can go to the next slide. So this kind of poses a question as, whether this is an accident or not. And kind of unfortunately and thematic to this litigation, it's not. We know that these companies have intentionally engineered and designed and pushed their platforms to hook kids for their ad revenue. So we know that they've kind of designed, operated, and re-honed their platforms, and kind of particularly around some of the use of their algorithms. It's intended to hook kids. It's intended to keep people on their platforms for as long as possible. We also know that, kind of youth brain maturation, it's a lot harder to kind of fight some of those impulses. So these defendants are able to kind of collect data and keep users on the platforms for as long as possible. Ultimately, again, to the detriment of young users. If we can go to the next slide. And we know this has an impact on schools. We've seen that students across a lot of age ranges, but especially kind of in the middle and high school range, are self-identifying with higher rates of depression, stress, anxiety. We also know this impacts absenteeism. A lot of our other clients have also seen increases in behavioral and disciplinary incidents. We can go to the next slide. And we also know this has a big impact on school districts in terms of school districts are the #1 place in this country where kids receive mental health services. 96% of public schools offer some form of mental health services to their kids. And we see this has really increased. The need has increased, and it's kind of outstripping and outpacing the ability that schools have to provide those resources. I'm sure you're all too well aware that, schools face a lot of budget constraints. And we've seen, across the state and across the country, the need for mental health services is really becoming kind of a bigger piece of that budget, and something a lot of districts are having a hard time being able to fill. We can go to the next slide. Kind of more of the same thing. If we jump ahead, I want to be mindful of our time. We can go to the next slide. And so kind of the result of that is that school districts have been taking action. A little under 2 years ago, some of the first personal injury cases were filed, either on behalf of individuals, parents on behalf of their kids, again, people who were experiencing anxiety, depression, eating disorders, attempts of suicide, deaths from suicide. And on the heels of that, school districts also started to take action because, again, they've been impacted not only in their ability to provide an education, there's a real disruption to the classroom environment. And again, spending more and more resources on providing these very much well-needed mental health services to students. And so we're at a point now where since 2023, more than 800 school districts from 33 different states have filed suit in kind of what are two consolidated actions, one in California State Court and the other in federal court in the Northern District of California. And Keller Rohrbach, we are in a leadership position in the consolidated proceedings in California State Court, where a vast majority of the school district cases are unfolding. If we can go to the next slide. And really what these, kind of the heart of the lawsuit for school districts is this public nuisance claim. And so this is really something we kind of took out of our playbook from the Juul litigation, also in the opioids litigation, of which our firm is also very heavily involved. And really what that is saying, there's been this unreasonable interference with the public right. Here, that's the public right to health, which is something that courts have historically recognized, but then also a public right to education. Again, kind of that disruption piece, and that teachers aren't able to teach, administrators aren't able to administrate, and students are having a harder time being able to learn. And we're also kind of packaging that with some negligence claims as well. And kind of the nice thing about the public nuisance claim, kind of unique about it, not only is a school district able to claim past damages, there's also what we call kind of in legalese abatement, which is forward-looking and kind of allows districts, in the Juul case, this is kind of forward-looking prospective relief, additional services, kind of extra coursework a school can roll out, kind of looking at what will it, kind of take and cost to fix the problem, seeing that it's ongoing. And again, this was, kind of a successful claim in our Juul litigation that recently settled favorably for a lot of our clients. We can go to the next slide. Ultimately, this case is not about ending social media. We know that social media is not bad across the waterfront. There's certainly a lot of positives, especially for some minority groups of students who identify as LGBTQ+. Really, this is looking at kind of taking some of these really harmful aspects and design elements at the margins and getting rid of those. And this is kind of twofold. On the one hand, certainly trying to get some of those additional funds for school districts to provide those well-needed mental health resources. And on the other is kind of this injunctive aspect, again, trying to kind of take away and carve out some of these especially harmful practices that the defendants have engaged in. We can go to the next slide. And kind of we're at a point where we've gotten through a lot of the big briefings, some of the kind of bigger legal hurdles. which kind of Section 230 has been one of the defendants' big arguments, saying that they can't really be held liable for third-party content. But again, we've been able to persuade the court this is really their own conduct, their own design choices that are hooking users and keeping them on their platform, not the actions of third parties. We can go to the next slide. And fortunately, the courts have been accepting our arguments, kind of again in that personal injury track, so not the school districts. Those cases have been allowed to move forward. We are now in active discovery, getting documents, planning to depose some of these defendants. And we expect the school district cases to follow. We recently wrapped up kind of our last batch of hearings, and we're kind of expecting a formal ruling in the next month, but all indications would seem to point to the school district cases moving forward. We can go to the next slide. And so really we're at a point where of the school districts that are already on file, a handful will kind of be selected to be worked up as what we call bellwethers. So obviously not very economic for 800 school districts to go through kind of the full-blown discovery and trial prep process. So for most school districts, and if Issaquah were to join, it'd be kind of a matter of course filing a complaint. That case would then be consolidated with all of the other cases, all the other school districts who have filed. It's kind of a limited discovery tool we call a plaintiff fact sheet. And then at that point, most school districts are kind of waiting in the wings to see how those few bellwether cases kind of shake out. And if and when a trial happens, which would likely be at some point next year, that would kind of be informative to all the parties for how some kind of global settlement, what kind of that would look like and what kind of the valuation of those cases would be. We can go to the next slide. And then here certainly are some, things to consider. These cases are complex, but again, this is something that's in our bailiwick, something we're in for the long haul. Again, we're in a leadership position. We're, in this case to actually litigate, kind of pick up a check. And again, fortunately, because of kind of the status of the litigation, this is a pretty convenient, kind of nice time for school districts to enter. Again, most school districts are going to file a complaint and then kind of wait to see how those bellwether cases shape out. That means most school districts are not going to go through the full-blown discovery process. We're not having to pull staff members out of class to do any depositions. And our representation is on a contingent basis. So there are no upfront costs to the district. That would really only come from a successful resolution where the district gets paid, so rollback gets paid. And so far, we've seen a lot of kind of, I think, great press, certainly good press when Seattle Public Schools filed. I think we've seen kind of a lot of support for all the school districts who filed to date. And, we're kind of at a point where we're champing at the bit to get this case into court. And we're, certainly happy to answer any questions you all have.
Wanted to open up for questions from the board.
I guess I can go. This is going to sound very basic, and maybe me being the more novice board member here, but this seems like a no-brainer. I think we should support it. I honestly not sure I have even any questions. I mean, I think that I don't see, I'd be curious to hear from my fellow board members on this, but I'm not sure I see any negative impact from being involved in this. I mean, I think this is important. And I think the point, Chris, that you made in terms of some of the positives that could come to us from this by doing this, could really benefit the Issaquah School District. So I would say I'm all for this. So thank you.
Dr. Moline.
So I'm not opposed to the concept. I think for me, there's a fairly large distinction to be made. And I guess what I'd like to discuss is the two references we're using is around the opioid crisis and around vaping. The difference here is we actually have zero tolerance policies for both of those in our schools, where we do not have the same for social media. And so for me, that's a very large distinction. I'm not saying I'm against having a zero tolerance policy, but that's the leap for me in this case. I would love to have the conversation about zero tolerance. I would love to have the conversation about banning cell phones. I would love for us to talk about what we are doing here at home in order to make substantive change at which to then say those things are not working. Now, I have had conversations with at least one of my board peers that says it's an and. And so if that's the way we want to go about it, as an and conversation. But for me, my challenge with this as presented is, and frankly, I hope the other districts evaluated for themselves, is what action, what demonstrated action has been taken in order to take protections within the environment today first.
Great points, and I welcome that opportunity for us to engage with our district administration and students on that, because I think we heard very clearly through listening sessions that that's a interest of our teachers. Director Moraldo.
I think those are really great points, Director Mullings, that I think we need to consider. When I look at things though, the thing that is difficult about this is even if we were to prohibit it in our buildings, we can't prohibit it when they're away from our buildings. And the thing that is similar between this and especially Jewel is that they are literally targeting our students. There is a benefit to target our students to get lifelong users. And we are seeing the detriments of that. We did not sign on to the Jewel lawsuit, and so we received no benefit when that ended up coming up with a judgment. So we still have to deal with, how do we deal with vaping? How do we deal with the education that we need to do for students, the support we need to do for students? We don't even have like cessation programs in the schools, which I think would be important. You know, you can take away their vape pen, but if you're not providing them an opportunity to get better, and we don't have the financial support that other school districts are getting that signed on to that, right? Because we're getting zero benefit really from that lawsuit. So that's why I think signing on to this one for me is that I think they have an obligation. They are making billions upon billions of dollars off of our students while causing harm, not just now, which we see, but for the long term. And they're targeting with their algorithms rather than Jewel that was targeting with their ads, right? So how can we ensure that we have the support to do the side that we need to do, which is the training that students need? Why, you know, how do you use social media in a meaningful way, in a safe way, and all of those things that, you know, so I think some of your points though, Director Mullings, would be things that would come out in discovery. So we do need to consider, what are we doing policy-wise and procedure-wise within our schools so that if and when it comes to discovery, we have the ability to say, here's what we're trying to do to combat what you're doing to our students.
Can I add a couple clarifying points to that, just to kind of, you know, those are some great points. And I would add, you know, we're at a stage, you know, certainly I don't think anyone that's litigation is saying social media needs to go, we need a cell phone ban, you know, none of those conversations are happening. I think there's kind of a lot of wiggle room there and what that looks like. And just to clarify, this is kind of a similar posture like Jewel, where, you know, this isn't exactly a class action case. So certainly schools that don't file like Jewel are not ultimately going to recover. You know, there is that kind of buy-in of filing a complaint. And then I would add, you know, in terms of that programming, that is kind of part of that abatement piece I referenced. So, you know, certainly something in that kind of prospective forward-looking relief we would kind of ask for is trying to build out, you know, not only what, you know, does kind of a robust multi-tiered system of support kind of programming look like on the mental health side, it's also, you know, how do we kind of implement digital citizenship, right? Healthy social media use, you know, kind of programming. That would be kind of part of something we would seek. And, you know, kind of in our expert committees, again, right, this is a really large piece of litigation. We have a lot of leading psychologists, sociologists, child development, you know, we have a lot of experts we're going to be working with who can kind of help identify, you know, across the board kind of best practices for school districts, what some of those different components would look like.
Director Taylor.
Yeah, just a few comments. I mean, back to the cell phone conversation. I think my fellow board members know that's a conversation I'm very interested in having about what the proper policy moving forward in a modern world will be for our district in regards to that. That's obviously tangential and a broader topic than this. But you know, to me, this is with my own legal training and legal background, I have my own concerns about the complexity of the argument and causation and things like that. But that's not really here or there either. I think it seems fairly low risk for the district. That's the key question, you know, particularly with the contingent fee arrangement. It would make sense to join. I'm not trying the case. So you know, leave it to the attorneys that are, but that's my 2 cents. I don't really see that there's a lot of risk here, but district and potential upside for sure.
Thanks, Director Molly.
So my next area of pause, and again, not against any of it, my next area of pause is particularly in looking at the named companies, the named products. We do leverage some of those products within our instruction. So I think we need to be really clear about what does that mean, that part of this discussion, right? If we're on one hand saying that there is academic value, do we understand how pervasive the use of these same, or at least one that I note there that is used in our own instruction? And then are we, and I totally get the forward-looking piece, we can put together the plans in the future. That's maybe a little uncomfortable for me, but that's okay. But in this case, in which we believe there is academic value in leveraging the same technologies, what is our belief system there that it's somehow in, that is the other piece that maybe strikes me as a little peculiar in this. So I would love to understand more about what is our actual thought, position, premise on the use of some of these technologies in bona fide education, and what do we think either the alternative or the controls of are supposed to be, because that feels a little like it needs some help for me to wrap my head around as well.
I would say that, you know, we probably have been on the leading edge of having board policies about student outcomes for digital citizenship, or social media use, for its impact on mental health for nearly a decade. And so I think we need to continue to explore that. I know Director Moraldo has for years continued to talk about algorithms and the impact for what are shown in front of students. So I don't think that necessarily just because we use a platform means that we agree with the algorithms behind it, which I think for me is a big part of this. And for me, it's about planting a flag in the ground saying, we in the Issaquah School District believe that there is intentional, willful misdirection that's happening that is impacting student mental health, and that I stand against that. And I think that for me is an important message, whether we get assent from this or not, that I want them to know. I want our community to know that that's an important thing. My one question of concern is there any impact on staff time? Like, does this, by us saying, yes, we want to be part of this, does it impact you and any of your staff? Because the time limitation for you is quite excessive right now. And then I'll get to Director Moraldo after this answer.
Yeah, so we have done some initial outreach to other districts and in our own internal kind of conversations initially to say that there is staff workload time. That's really the cost to us that then displaces potentially time spent elsewhere. But I'll ask Martin Turner to share a bit more about what we have found. And we do think that it's manageable based on what we have found, but please share the details.
Yeah, specifically, I heard back from Highline School District, gave me an idea of what it took for them to do some information gathering for this, about 5-6 hours, divvied up among various staff. So in their opinion, not a huge burden, and it was well worth it. And so they recommended that this was something to pursue.
I was going to say the other piece that I didn't hear really discussed. So and maybe it goes under that at the personal injury is really around brain development, like literal brain chemistry development in our young people, that there is a concern of not having ongoing memory and attention span, that there is a higher, and I don't know where the studies are, but I don't know if that is something that's being looked at, is forms like TikTok, YouTube Shorts, really, what is that doing to our students' brain development and being able to keep their attention span? And teachers, many of the teachers during our listening sessions talked about, teaching to the tops of heads, because kids are rather watching something on their phone because they can't keep their attention throughout a 50 or 60-minute class. So I think there's that portion as well that I'm not hearing, and I'd be really interested in what those studies are and if that could be something added to that personal injury, because I am really concerned about what is going to happen 20 years from now with our students and how their brain development has changed.
And then the other wrinkle to that is I didn't see is the impact of AI and how that's being integrated in and harming students, particularly on these platforms that you mentioned that we have no ability to regulate. Any other questions amongst the board? Any questions from our student representatives? No. Go ahead. Sorry. Didi, go ahead.
Well, it seems like we've talked a lot about like the problem statement here, the effect on our mental health, like Director Moraldo was mentioning the effect on brain development, but it's not really clear to me what the solution here is. So can you talk to me more about why something like a lawsuit is necessary for this? Like, what is the purpose of doing that in terms of a solution rather than just here are the problems?
Yeah, so I think one of the hopes would be transparency in algorithms. If you know that you're getting a feed that is going to be addictive and make it to be where you spend an extra hour instead of going to sleep because of this, and you know that understanding that's what's happening in the way that know if you smoke a cigarette, like the health impact of that. I would want you to have that same understanding and depth of understanding through that. So then you can be a educated consumer. Because again, the point isn't that social media is bad. It's that social media has impacts that are hidden, that are underappreciated at an age when, I think having a child who's now just going through driver's ed, and as terrifying as that is as a parent, I think that the social media impacts are probably more terrifying to me than the driving part. So it really is high risk, and higher risk I think people appreciate until I cross paths with them in the ER. So I think that'd be one thing. The other thing is funding while our district invests millions of dollars in students' mental health counselors, we already have established policies. Our superintendent and her team do lots of things to explain, educate, inform practice of. Not a lot of districts have that same level of service and ability to do that depth of understanding for students.
I think that's a great question. And I think it's a good one for the lawyers because, from my perspective, lawsuits are about bringing financial inconvenience to the point of changing a business model, right? I mean, the point is to change the business model ultimately so that the companies don't profit off of your mental health decline, right? And so in Sydney's mind, right, unless and until there's enough financial motivation to cease that practice, that it outweighs the financial gain from having it, you change the business practice. And so for me, that's the much more practical outcome, which is how do you create a public condition or a financial condition that requires change in the business model to stop profiting off of this negative circumstance. That's my That would be my response if you were to ask me.
Do you want us to speak to that?
Could we actually put slide 11 back up? I mean, again, I think this was probably the most compelling slide for me, and I think clarifies too. This isn't about ending social media. I think it goes back to what Director Gallinger said too. It's aims to fund, to funnel funds, to screen, intervene, really work on the algorithms. And then the piece, if we're not involved in this, we don't potentially get that third bullet point. We lose that opportunity. The hiring of additional mental health professionals, developing additional mental health resources. I get the conversation around all these other things we have to figure out, but I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We've got a lot of stuff to consider, but I think we miss an opportunity if we're not involved in this. And I think this aims to do some really good things too. So.
Oh,
I think they wanted to respond.
The question, not just Iran.
Sorry, Carrie, you can go ahead and respond.
I just wanted to speak to the really good point that the aspiration here is both financial and also, I think, to change fundamentally the way that these platforms work for youth. That's our aspiration. And so we're seeking something which is referred to as injunctive relief, which essentially force these companies to alter the algorithms and the various settings that currently exist that allow and contribute to addiction, and change those to minimize the addictive impact on youth. And so that is part of I am so excited about being a part of this litigation, because the money that could come to districts and help with abatement and education is really important. But in the long term, we also want to change the impact on future generations and not have them be, not have them be exposed to the same level of addictive impact that we are seeing in our youth now, and the mental health impact. So it really is our aspiration to try and change fundamentally the way the platforms work for youth.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board or other comments from our superintendent?
We feel like this is something that we would be in support of, and so we wanted to surface this for board discussion, so also our community could hear that discussion from the board. We also were mindful of what the implications are on workflow and time allocation for our team. So in hearing the discussion, I'm hearing general support and some head nodding from the board around the direction we might go, and working with Keller Rohrbach and making an important statement about the practices that are being utilized by companies. But we also recognize, and I hear the point around engaging a discussion around how are we, right, teaching and doing more to support our youth. And so that's something that we look forward to that discussion on, and where we might also make adjustments moving forward, with regulation, policy, and practice. So noted, and that's a welcome discussion from our side as well.
Great.
I want to thank Carrie and Chris for joining us tonight, and for working with us and patience as we, were having different moments in time when we would start this portion of the agenda, as well as making sure you were audio heard and sound in the room here. So thank you.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Yes, we are grateful. And thank you, Superintendent, for bringing this forward. We appreciate it. The next item on our agenda is 2024-25 Student Board Representative Program.
I move the board accept the student representatives to the board for the 2024-25 year as presented.
I second.
Before we take public comment, did we want to show their names or have someone read them off?
Marcellus.
Marcel Hauser, Senior Advisor and Strategy Member. We wanted to first take a moment to celebrate the student reps from this year who served this year. So we're going to take a moment and thank them for their service. I just think about how much courage it takes to come into this adult space and share your wisdom. And we were just talking, we came off of a spring check-in meeting, and we were celebrating, reflecting how much growth we saw from the beginning of the year till now. So we're proud of our seniors. We have 4 seniors graduating and moving on. But the existing reps are going to roll over and mentor. So we're just excited about the program launch and super excited to welcome new reps to the program. So first, I'm going to read names of existing reps and have you come up to the podium and hand your certificate. And hopefully we'll get a quick picture before we introduce the new reps. So I'm going to start with Gibson Eck. So Hava Alcorn.
We lose Hava? Oh, she's up here. I was like, she was just here.
Leilani Matthew DeSiga. Naomi Wu. Yep, we can do a celebration, some hands.
Can we clap for the kids? Like,
Siddharth Bessari.
Okay.
Mia Williamson. Aditi Morali. Nathan Pan. And Dashida Jane. So give it up for our existing student reps. They have done such an amazing job this year, celebrating. So we want to make sure you guys were honored today. We want to get one more photo with them before they leave. So if we can have the existing reps come before the board, we'll get a quick shot. You can come in front of the board.
We had Nathan and then we lost Nathan.
We probably should just get it closer and make it look like a normal picture. Or we're looking first. Who's doing first?
Paparazzi dude.
Awesome. Okay. I'd be remiss if I did not also thank Bethany Rogers. So we could not do what we do in terms of the program and all the logistics around it, WASDA, WASA, all the W's, all the events we go to. Like Bethany's keeping my head screwed on straight to make sure we're getting all the details locked in. So thank you, Bethany. And thank you to our board directors, Director Mullings, Director Moraldo, as our board mentors and liaisons for the program. So thank you for your time and your mentorship this year. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to the board for formal action. Announcement of new reps.
Okay. So I'd like to announce Director Mullings and I did interviews, and we have some amazing students. I think we had over 60 some applicants.
We did.
For 4 positions. So I wanted to share that. From Gibson Eck, we will have Milo Walsh is here. Feel free to stand up and say hello. From Issaquah High, we have Ava Datta. Welcome, Ava. From Liberty High School, we have Krish Parashar. Krish, welcome. And then we have from Skyline High School, Nila Natarajan.
Yeah.
Great. And we are really excited about that. So if you want to come up and say welcome to the board and we'll shake your hand, you can start here and walk across.
You can start with AJ.
Yeah. So
we are glad that you chose this service to your student bodies and to the community, and look forward to you joining us in this journey. You got a little taste about all the different paths that it takes tonight. So with that, I wanted to open up for any public input. Is there any public input in the room or on Zoom on this topic? Hearing none. We have a motion. Is there any further discussion from the board or comments before we take a vote? No? Okay. All those in favor of accepting the candidates as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? There you go. Congratulations. Okay. As if we haven't already had enough excitement tonight, our next item on the agenda is resolution 1222, 2022 capital levy repurposing. Is there any motion?
Sorry, I'm still not used to this job. I move the board adopt resolution 1222, providing for the repurposing and redirecting of funds from the 2022 capital levy in the amount of $44 million to construct high school vestibules, acquire and equip an early learning center, purchase land for the transportation facilities, and upgrade fire systems.
Second.
Thank you, Superintendent.
Great, thank you. As a next step from our last board meeting, there was a request to consider how we could put forward a proposal and resolution for the board to consider action on for the repurposing and use of 2022 capital levy dollars on priority projects that were also discussed as part of the bond advisory committee and accelerating that work because of the need right now. So I have Mr. Attorney here as well as Leisha Engels and to guide us through and answer any questions the board might have.
All right, thank you. I'm not sure if we'll be able to pull it up on the screen, but I can read off. It is on the agenda, and well, as you look for that, maybe of interest, again, this was related to the 2022 capital levy and the portion therein, $44 million that was set for the construction of the high school. This would repurpose to the items that you mentioned, and I'll just kind of run down the dollar amounts of those if it's of interest. It's 7.6 million for the vestibules for Issaquah High, Liberty High, and Skyline to increase safety and security. 20 million to acquire, construct, and equip an early learning center. 14.4 million upgrade fire systems district-wide, and 2 million to acquire the land for transportation facilities. That totals the $44 million that would be repurposed. There you have. Thank you.
Just technical question as we open it up. Is there any language that we need to have in there that offers like flexibility for, I mean, those are all estimates of costs and whether they can't be done or excess money goes to do other projects. Is that language in there?
As I understand,
because it was in the bond one. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. So the compliance elements of the bond are stricter. And as I talked through this with Cynthia Weed, our counsel that put this together for us, she's assured that one thing they don't have specific amounts attached to each bullet item, so that kind of helps us in that regard. And then we can revert back to the original use of the funds if for any case we need to, or we have excess at the end. So.
Okay. Just since you know what we've gone through in the past year, I want to make sure that we have all of the legal and appropriate language that we need.
Understood.
So wanted to open up to board questions first before we get to discussion. So it'll go questions, public comment, and then discussion. No question, no technical question. You were just that thorough.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Well, I think, and maybe, so I know last board meeting, this was a lengthy part of the discussion of setting up the purpose and all of that. So I don't personally need to revisit that here. So I don't have any technical questions of like how we got here or why.
Perfect. I will open up for public input. Is there any public input on this resolution 1222 in the room or on Zoom?
It's not.
No, I don't see any hands raised on Zoom. I think in 2024, we can be assured that people know how to raise their hands. Okay. Hearing no public input, I will open it up to board discussion. And Director Mullins, you can kick us off. Oh, hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Looks like now there was a hand raised. It was momentarily raised, so whoever Ashley's iPad is, did you have public comment on this item? Okay. Thank you.
So first, I thank you for pulling this together. I do back to the clarity and making sure procedurally we're following the right steps. I appreciate us taking the step and documenting for clarity and sharing that publicly, the use of these funds. So thank you for doing that. I think for me, what's most important is where we have identified through the very thorough bond process opportunities that are agreed to by the community, presented by the superintendent, and we can accelerate those today. That's super important for me. And so as I look at this list, I think that this is a very good place to present or to utilize the funds that are here, particularly around the safety and security items, around vestibules at the 3 high schools, the fire systems. Like those are just items that we need to make sure we have right and that are in our basic needs. So I think presenting them in this way, funding them in this way, for me makes a lot of sense. Certainly on the other 2, which are about land acquisition, it doesn't get any cheaper here in our area. So I think our opportunity to move forward with those 2 at this time is a great approach versus waiting much longer, and we just continue to raise the potential cost to the district and therefore taxpayers. So thank you for going through the step in the process of us having the ability to have this on in the public forum, as well as ensuring along with legal counsel that we're handling it all in the appropriate way.
Thank you. It's like you watched our meeting last.
I did. As soon as I landed, I was in flight last meeting. So as soon as I landed, I watched the YouTube. I encourage everyone to do so.
Director Moraldo.
I definitely, those 2 areas, the safety and land acquisition, I think are really important. And those are items that I'm glad we're not having to delay on by passing this, because I don't want to delay on safety until after it was necessary. And land acquisition, I think every day that goes by, potential land could be swallowed up by somebody else. And so those I think are really urgent to spend immediately. This does not reduce the proposed bond amount. It doesn't increase the proposed bond amount by doing this thing. So but I do believe that rather than having money sitting there waiting for us to have everything we need for a new high school, those dollars can be put to work now, and spending money now is wiser than trying to let it sit there and try to do those purchases later.
Director Taylor.
I'm just piling on here. But I just want to say the approach here makes a lot of sense to me. Being a lot cleaner about how we're using levy funds versus bond funds, what the purposes are. I think that's important for the community to understand. And then again, same thing. Really, really glad to see that we're particularly going to do the work around the vestibules. If you're in those buildings, those high schools, if we can be more secure and more safety in the access to those buildings, I think that'll be a big priority for the entire community. So very much support that.
Thank you. Dr. Coy?
Nothing further to add. I'm in full support.
I think that I agree with, I just want to again reemphasize for the community what Director Taylor said as well, that this returns us back to what we heard from the community about the levy should have been used for critical repairs and bonds are for big building investments. And that's what this does, clean up. And I don't think there's more critical repairs than putting safety and security at the top of our list, which we heard clearly through the work you did with the bond committee and through even just survey information we have that's been given to us for community feedback. And then, as has been stated, like land only gets more expensive every single day. So to try and decelerate some of the inflationary costs that we have ahead of us with the bond and help make every tax dollar go further, I think these are wise choices. So I appreciate these choices that you brought forth. Did you have anything for your team?
No, I just want to thank our team, Martin, Leisha, and Tom, and others who are working to make sure we are processing and adjusting based on, all the needs that we do have and prioritizing those as such. So thank you.
Great. Oh, yeah, Naomi.
Hello? All right, this is better, right? Okay. I just want to make sure that we're staying aware of accessibility for the vestibules, which are like the kind of double doors is what I'm thinking, right? Just making sure that we have accessibility when we're designing those, and then also just making sure that when school ends and when school starts, there's usually a swell of students going out the main entrances, that students are able to go through those doors safely without being trampled and without hitting the doors.
Great. Yes, I'm sure they have all those into account. I think it does then highlight the disparity we'll have when we have still hundreds of our students in portables. Probably many students here have a class in portables. I know my child has one. So I think that's future messaging. Probably going to come up in the next topic about why it's so critical that we have enough capacity across our district for all of our high school students to be in their buildings. So hearing no further board comment, I think we have a motion in front of us. So all those in favor of a resolution 1222 2022 capital levy repurposing, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There we go. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is bond update and resolution.
Doug, could you start with the bottom, the slide?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a motion?
This is a long one.
The last one.
I move the board adopt resolution 1223, providing for the form of the ballot proposition and specifying certain other details concerning submission to the qualified electors of the district at a general election to be held therein on November 5th, 2024, of a proposition for the issuance of general obligation bonds in the aggregate principal amount of $642,345,000. These bonds will provide funds to construct, equip, modernize, and make certain capital investments to facilities of the district.
Second.
Great. Superintendent.
Great. I'll pass it right over to Martin Turney and Leisha Engels to walk us through the details of this resolution and bond update.
Okay, can you advance the slides, please? So I wanted to start with reiterating kind of what we heard from the last meeting, making sure that we brought in the information and the product that you were expecting us to make sure that we kind of built up to the discussion of the actual document itself, the bond resolution. Next slide, please. So I wanted to just go over what we heard from the last meeting. Of course, we just had the resolution to repurpose the 44 million. So that was one of the first bullet points there. One We have some information about the where the projects are throughout the district, and we did the overlay of the map where students are living. We can show you that in just a second. Do have some information about the structure of the debt and the timeline of those bonds if we were to sell those in the spring, and also some of the timing that goes along with how we've sold bonds in the past and when we've had timing of bond conversations as a district. So next slide, please. So this slide is really meant to actually kind of go over what we just talked about. So how was the document from the superintendent's recommendation modified now that we've repurposed the $44 million? So the amounts that were removed, those amounts that we just talked about, and the adjustment, of course, is made to the high school project. So a $44 million increase in that category. Again, as you mentioned, the bottom line remains the same. That's a in and out. And then the rest of the projects remain on that list there. Next slide. And just to kind of bring it home once more, we added a slide to show how the math works for the high school and the remaining costs for that project to come to completion. Next, please. Okay, so this was the map overlay. So originally we had shown this with just kind of those circles throughout the map. And so what we did is we went back and mapped out where are the student residents in our district. And so it may be a little bit tougher to see, but the red dots below show where folks are. And so I believe the comment was made in the previous meeting about how we have, you know, the mountains and the areas where people don't live. So they obviously we don't have a lot going on there. So again, this is just to show that these projects exist where folks live and are taking advantage of our schools. Next, please. Okay, and then so we had provided previously also kind of the historical and forward-looking potential tax rate as a projection. What was added to this was the prior 20-year average tax rate of $3.91. And for those listening out there, I'll remind you that this includes everything. So this is the total local school tax portion. So it's our operating EP&O, transportation, and those critical repairs and technology levies, as well as bonded debt. So one other piece of information added was kind of the timing of when the district may have had bond conversations in the past. Obviously interrupted by COVID, so that cycle that we may have been on previously was a bit interrupted. So I wanted to point that out. And when in the next slide, I have some information about kind of the structure of the debt and the timing of when those payments are due. The year to look at on here is 2029. And so I'll explain this in just a second, but if we are to pass the bond and start issuing debt, there is kind of a culminating time. And if that's the year where we will have all the new bond issues with an interest payment, plus we will have the existing debt that we're paying off that year. So it's kind of like the high point, the high watermark. So can you go to the next slide? So this was me trying to explain that. One of the benefits of the way it's structured now in that projection is that it keeps that tax rate level. And by the terms that are on that example, it actually keeps that year 2029 to a lower level. If we were to stretch it out 20 years, we pay a higher rate, right? So we are going to pay more in the long term. We're also going to pay a higher rate. So in 2029, when we stack all those necessary interest payments, it's actually going to push that 1 year a bit higher. So it's going to be a bit of a odd fluctuation in how the tax rate would work. And then so the shorter term versus a longer 20-year actually helps us because we save long-term amounts of interest we'd be paying. It helps us keep that tax rate level. It doesn't have the abnormal spike in 2029. And so really, I think that's a benefit to the way that that's projected out. I did do some homework on quite a few of our most recent issues, and our terms have ranged from 13 to 16 years, depending on what was beneficial at the time. So when we look at this in the bond resolution, it will say a max term of 20 years. We would likely, as you can see here, want to structure it in such a way that it's the most beneficial for us, whether it's under 20 or closer to 20. So, and can you advance more? Okay, so again, in just a second, we'll pull up the actual bond resolution. It was created based on the bond package in the slide we showed you earlier, based on input from the board. It's also attached to the agenda, and if approved, this is what helps us get this filed with the county to have this on the November ballot. So technically, we need to do this before August 6th, but it benefits us to have this approved and work on the information we can get to the public as soon as possible. So I don't know if I don't know if we want to stop for questions or if we go straight to the resolution.
Yeah, let's pause for questions because I think that way we can toggle through particular sides that board members may have questions on, because the resolution is less, I mean, that's just technical language.
Yeah.
So I see Director Mullins.
I just want to make sure. So the updates to slide, I guess it's your slide 34, the projected tax rate.
Yes.
Over time, I really like these updates. I think this is a very helpful representation. The one number and all the numbers you just said my brain didn't hold on to is we're saying we're not using the 20-year, but this is what, a 15? I don't know what this is. Actually.
Oh, so this would be closer to not. So so I'll try to. We would likely sell in 4 consecutive years, and each of those 4 consecutive years would be a 9 or 10-year term for those.
Okay.
So at the end, it stretches out to somewhere around 13 years. So that's why it stops right in like 2037. Yeah.
Got it. I was like, I'm hearing all the what we're not doing, but what is this? Okay, that was my one technical.
Other board technical questions? And while you're thinking of those, I really appreciate this slide update, super helpful. And can you go back to the one where it shows all the student distribution? There's the one southern part of our district, like southeast, that has no buildings in it. Is that outside the urban growth boundary? Just for my.
Oh gosh, that's just beyond my expertise. I wonder, Tom, do you know that?
Like the Tiger Mountain area.
I mean, down.
Yeah, I mean, that's Tiger Mountain.
It's down the Hobart Road. I'm just curious, like everything.
Yeah, there's all of those people go to Maple Hills, Maywood, and then Liberty.
Yeah, we may need to check that just to make sure we're giving you the right answer.
But I don't know. I would assume, yes, they're outside the urban growth.
Just curious. I want to be able to answer that question.
They're
like, why aren't you
unincorporated.
doing any investments in that area where there's people? And I'm like, because we can't. So.
And it's a mountain. It would be like building on top of Cougar Mountain.
Or the bottom of Cougar Mountain. I think that was equally challenging, just to be clear.
Yes.
Well, and there isn't an existing building there either. So yeah.
Okay. Other board questions?
That one stopped us.
You guys are that good. You have you've left the board speechless again.
Oh, okay.
Like, wow. Okay. Any student representative questions? No.
Oh, I might.
Oh, just fine.
So not necessarily related to this, but I think just I guess maybe more of a comment. I think in all of our presentations, if we could, between now, anything related to the bond between now and the fall, reiterate the delay. So 2016 bond, I know we talked about at our last board meeting, all those items. If we could just, every board meeting, if we could review those. I don't know if other board members think that would make sense, but that is a common question I get a lot of in the community.
Do you mean that there's been 8 years since the last bond, that timeline?
Well, no, no. I don't mean the detail that's behind it, but I know, Martin, you had that there was a slide that spoke to the permitting, the delay component. It was just bullet point
for the high school.
For the high school specifically. Yeah, sorry, for the high school. I should have clarified that.
Sure.
If that could be something, because I think it's just good again, I get a lot of questions on that, and I think it would be good just to have that on there for folks that are listening into our board discussions. I think it's just a useful piece of information.
And once we come to the conclusion of this topic, before we move on to the next one, I'm going to be imploring the board and our superintendent and Leisha to all get together and really work on what we want the FAQs to be, because we're the ones that get our ears chirped into all the time. We want to make sure that we have all those answers before we launch our website with that first initial set of FAQs. And I love how you did the audit where you allowed people to be able to add or ask other questions. And so this will be fundamental to that. So any other questions? Okay. Wanted to open it up to public input. Any public input in the room or on Zoom? If you have public input on Zoom, if you would use the raise hand button, and we will acknowledge you. And while waiting for that, one thing that I would like, Martin, is for a slide for you to build. This will require you to get some technical support for this. Is one of the questions that have been asked is, this is a big number. Why this? Why now? But I think what we also need to then be able to ask is, these projects are all the absolute must be done in the next 6 years. So let's say we wait a year, 2 years, so I would like to see a slide showing the project costs and the projected $642 million, what it would cost if we ran the bond in 2026, 27, 28, 29 through 2030, like each year. Because I think it's also, we want to say is we are also not uncomfortable with the number. That's not right, because we're comfortable with the number because we have all the information the community doesn't have. But one piece that we are worried about is we've lived through what escalating cost looks like. And so, but I think we need to show it really clearly and concretely to our community of, this is why we're going on now, is because we only know that kicking that can down the road is only going to cost more. So that would be a really helpful thing as well.
Okay.
I see no questions or no public comment on Zoom or in the room. So wanted to open up to board discussion. Dr. Morado.
I think my first, a little bit along that line of thinking as President Gallinger was talking about, I think for me, what is still an interesting thing for the public to be aware of when they see the size of the number is that typically Issaquah ran bonds between 4 and 6 years, and that it has been 8 years. So when they see that number, we really are running 2 bond cycles worth of building needs. And I think that somehow getting that, because it looks like, why do we have such a large number? In the future, I may say, I don't think I like this 8 years between bond thing, because it allows those other bonds to drop off so far that you have no choice but to raise the tax rate. And I think that's some of what we're feeling. And when we see those numbers and when we look at the size of the projects that need to be done. So I think those are some things for us to be able to communicate when we're talking about it. So somewhere in the FAQs identifying that this is, we had an extended amount of time without a bond.
That's a great point that I hadn't thought about, that we needed to communicate. Yes, 3 years ago at year 5, I did escalate those concerns, but that whole COVID thing overshadowed my concerns. Dr. Coyne.
So to Director Moraldo's point, I completely agree. I mean, I think it's sort of it's a story of sorts, over the last 8 years, and why, again, to reiterate, and I think most people know, obviously, with the pandemic, but I think it's helpful to give that mapping, because I think that 4 to 6 year average it's good to know that historically that's what we did. And now this is moving out, this has now been 8 years. So I think that historical piece, that's where I get a lot of questions around all of that. And I think having, again, a comprehensive FAQ that speaks to the history of this, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I think that once you hear that story, you understand why we're doing this now. So.
Dr. Taylor.
And more specifically on that point, particularly around the tax rate, we have the dip in 2023. We want to make sure that we can explain that because of the cycle. But also, I just think it's such a great story that really here the tax rate is pretty steady. And that is really a reflection, I think, that the district has been very considerate here and is trying to keep its spending, in line with historical trends. And, we're just funding at the level that the community is said that they want in their facilities. So I think that's definitely part of the story that we want to make sure we're emphasizing.
I think another slide that would be helpful for me to, as we start to build this deck, is the asset protection element. So I think the number is big, but if you look at what is the overall assessed value of our assets across the district, and if we see like, gosh, we're trying to protect X number of $1 billion worth of assets through building modernization, through energy efficiency, which would free up operational dollars for our classrooms. That's another important part of the story, because I think we have to just create context. And right now people just see the number and it's like, whoa, the same thing we felt several months ago. So I think that would also be important context, because I actually don't have any clue for how much assets that we currently have that we're trying to continue to keep up to the standard that our community expects, because our community does expect a different standard than other school districts or other communities. Dr. Mullins.
Thank you. I think for me, and I maybe going down the what do I hope for in the FAQs, I'm just looking at the breakdown of projects in these larger categories. Similar to what you said, right? The number is very large, right? But there is an associated story about, well, how much is the value of all of these assets, which is tremendous. But also, I think from an FAQ perspective, I think it's really important that we take it section by section. So for example, I think when you look at just the building stewardship, obviously there's the clean building stuff, but there's this building modernization. And I think my brain always goes to roofs. I think I've had to replace too many roofs on my house that I'm always like, and just, in a however many buildings we are, 20, 30 building, 30 building organization, just what does that look like in any given year? I mean, we're spending millions and millions of dollars a year on roofs. And I just think if you look at that number, it's over $100 million over 6 years of roofs. So if we can look at each of these as their own separate set of FAQs, and what are the special considerations differently in some of these categories, because to your point about asset protection, there's a lot of money in just making sure that we keep the beautiful aesthetics of the buildings we have that are phenomenal that many other districts just don't have. But like my brain always goes to the roof replacement. So I think if somehow we can just look at them section by section, what in a given year do we spend on just plain roof replacement or some of these major system works? I think just give people a sense of that scale. It's very hard to understand the scale of what we're talking about over 6 years at an entity of this size. So anyway, we can try to make that more accessible, I guess, would be super helpful.
Another part of the story that I'd appreciate is, this is going to go way back, is I would like to see part of our storyline of what was the enrollment of Issaquah High School and Liberty High School in 1997 when you broke ground on Skyline, or whenever that bond was passed to build Skyline. Because I think that would also surprise the community, because I suspect Issaquah High School was not the size it is today in the mid-90s.
I love that idea. I think you kind of read my mind, sort of a history lesson of sorts. I think that would be a great data point. Might also be interesting to see some of the work we've done historically on our buildings too. This idea of kind of paying it forward, like, oh, I know my elementary school was remodeled, I don't know, 10 years ago, but now that was part of this cycle. So you acknowledge something that was done, and that we need to do these for other schools too, and or build the new high school. I think just a history lesson, and I think that component going back to Skyline would be an interesting, because that was really a significant change for the Issaquah School District, really, when Skyline was built. And I think that would be an interesting point to maybe, what was that, 1997, to go from 97 forward, potentially with sort of a bit of a history lesson on what we've done. Because I think the other aspect of this is when you look at our buildings and our facilities in Issaquah, they are beautiful. And I think something for us as residents of this Issaquah School District to be very proud of and understand this continual process and needing to do those upgrades, and that this is why this next bond is needed to continue what we have done over this long cycle. So a history lesson would be great, or story.
Because we can't rest on just keeping it as is and expect to still stay like top school district in the state. Like it does require investment and sustained investment. And this is part of that
And just
dialogue with the community.
Just being really frank too. I mean, there's some urgency here, at least in my mind, about the overcrowding of the schools. I was actually had the benefit of being at Issaquah High this morning, observing some cool classes, and driving up there, I encountered the traffic that so many of our families are encountering, and seeing, you know, how difficult that was. And then being in the buildings being in the building in between the periods.
Yeah.
And seeing just the choke points in the hallways. I just know that it registers with our community when they understand how grossly overcrowded those buildings are. And we have just really to the point we need this high school because of the cascading effects of overcrowding. The other thing that I thought was really interesting that I learned is actually how much movement our teachers in those buildings have to do, because they don't have places to teach. They have to share teaching spaces because they're constantly moving throughout the buildings as well. So, that all really struck me. And I think that's just really, again, to emphasize the urgency that we're looking at here is very important.
Following up on that, that'd be really helpful also to know can you reach out to all of our Kinko high schools? So how common is it for high school teachers to not have their own classroom? I would really like to have that sense, because I think that is a good point. I mean, if we can do this to also help create more like just better time use for our staff, not have to like pack up into a cart and move every single period. That seems like that would be also welcome, and probably, I'm assuming, within the regional standard, and that we are unique in order to try and accommodate all of this. That I think that is part of our story about why like this just isn't sustainable.
And I'm conscious of the fact that you're diligently taking all these notes as we add all these things to this list. I want to go back to the portable conversation too. And I know we had this conversation with the levy component, but the idea, I think it would be interesting to, again, understand the number of portables that we have at particularly obviously at Skyline and Issaquah High School. And what does that mean from a safety standpoint? Because if you're in a portable, it's very different from being in the main building. And I think that would also be something I'd like to kind of explore, at least have, you know, couple talking points around what that looks like, because that is a concern when I mean, we talk about building the vestibules at the high school. Well, if you're in a portable, you don't benefit from that. And I think a good thing for us to highlight.
Or the portable on Issaquah campus that you can't get to on time. You have a class in that building because it's so far away from the building.
I think for me, some of the things around it, messaging, I'd love to have the words Clean Building Act taken off of this.
I think we is it in there? We intentionally, it's not in our bond resolution.
Right, it's not enough, but when we're talking about this,
Sure.
because I mean, partly because it's an unfunded mandate. Thank you very much to the legislature, that's likely not going to change. But I think it's in the communication to our public. It's really about utility efficiencies within our buildings. And, you know, so when we start talking about HVAC, that these are systems that are for air quality and electrical efficiencies within the buildings, rather than a term that might tick a lot of people off, like, oh, we're having to do this because the legislature passed this thing that I wouldn't have voted for. So I think for me, that's an important messaging piece, is that we're really messaging what is it that we're doing in the buildings, rather than otherwise it pains me to see those words up there.
Thank you for sharing that. We have functional documents which have been part of how we've been building this work with our bond advisory committee. So we didn't make major changes to verbiage for communication purposes. It was more functional. But as we move forward, we've already been using really important language around energy efficiency and sustainability for our buildings, so that we're conscious of our, footprint, as well as even, really focusing on career preparation in a lot of our words moving forward. And that's something that we have, we appreciate the affirmation of that, and we'll continue to be mindful of all of these, this input going forward.
And then I just had another, it's just a general comment, probably won't go into the FAQs, but as a reminder that I think it was 516 million was in our last bond in 2016, would be a $670 million bond in today's dollars.
Yes. I'm going to go back to Director Taylor's point around traffic. If there's in the FAQ, if we could notate something around bus delays. This is coming from my son when he started at Skyline High School as a freshman, literally went probably the first quarter being late to first period because of the bus delay. And as a freshman was too afraid to go up to his teacher and say, oh, it was because of the bus. And so we were getting the call every day and having my wife and I having to call. And again, traffic delay. And I think we've all seen that if you've been to Skyline or Issaquah High. And unfortunately, at least if you're a parent going there, you know what to expect. But if you're a person who's needing to get through there and you're not a parent for whatever reason, it's just a standstill at those schools. And so I think we need to emphasize that and have some data around that, because I'm sure many parents have experienced what I experienced with my son when he first started at Skyline.
We'd love to hear any student voice or impact you could envision this having for you, from not having to truck out to the portables in our awesome weather, or any sort of the safety and security elements that would be for our buildings, but exclude portables.
So I think I've had quite a few classes in the portables, especially my world language classes were all in the portables. That's usually like where they are right now. And I think every single time that I used to walk over there, it's a very big walk. That's the thing. And I think I was regularly late to the class. And I think the other thing is that the teachers also knew that a lot of kids were going to be late. And I think they were nice enough to like make a bit of understanding, but that unfortunately meant that they had to release kids like 2 to 3 minutes early, and then they also had to wait like 5 to 10 minutes for students to even show up. And that really like cut down on their learning time, and on the learning time I think that we had. I feel that that can be done like more efficiently in some ways.
Anyone else? No? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Mullings.
Because we've talked about so many of these other things, I don't want to lose what I think is a really important section of the needs included here, which is around innovation and around expanding career preparation opportunities at our secondary. And so it's critical. We've had many months of conversation about the importance to our district and being able to expand, move into new and additional programming at each of our high schools. Hopefully I'll get all secondary soon. Each of our high schools that allows us to have programming that's really more focused on certifications and other career readiness during high school. And so I just think it's an incredibly important opportunity that we've outlined here at each of the high school buildings to be able to expand some level of programming, physical space, and programming in order to really lean into that mission of having earning ready graduates at the end of high school.
Agreed. Any other board? Any other thing from our superintendent? Okay. So we've had questions, we've asked for public input, we've had discussion. Ready to bring that to a closure? Yes, okay. So we have a motion in front of us for bond
I think we
resolution.
were still gonna go back to the technical language.
Oh, yeah, sorry. You were gonna anything you want to say about the bond language?
Oh, well, I guess the only thing I was going to say is that it is currently dated June 13th, so we would need to update that date if that was going to be something for today. Which we can do.
I think I trust that to be done. Don't think that we need to formally amend that. Unless our expert feels like we need to.
I would like to make an amendment to change that June 13th date to May 23rd, 2024.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, so this is just voting in favor of the amendment to change the date on the resolution language. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Any other things to our attention that we need to be aware of?
No, I just appreciate the process and we've done a lot to get here. And again, thanks to the committee and all the work that we've done together. Appreciate that. So yeah, that's it for me.
Yeah, we appreciate it and know that this has been a really long effort that you guys have undertaken. And while it's come into fruition, it seems like, wow, we're just moving quickly. We're actually not. This is 5 months in the making of a lot of community input and a lot of dialogue. So thank you for making it readily digestible for us and compelling for us. And now it'll be incumbent on us to make it digestible for the community. So any further discussion of this resolution? Okay. All those in favor of approving resolution 1223 for bond in 2024, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Go. Now, a couple of technical questions post, because I wasn't on the board when the last bond was actually put on the ballot. I was on the board when we were campaigning and voting. Does the board have to take or make a resolution to endorse our own bond?
Oh,
because I feel like I remember that, like watching that, but maybe I just remember it wrongly, and I can't go back and look at a video because it was only podcasts back then, and I was just because I was sitting there. But I feel like the board had to do something before we could publicly start talking about it from a advocacy standpoint. So can someone verify?
Don't recall that, but
I can verify that. I also was not in this position, or I don't think I was even in the district at that point in time. I'm like timelining it. Actually at a recent conference for Washington State PR Association, they were talking about how to include your board in some of those measures. And so there is some information that I have on that, and I'll share that with you so you can kind of digest it and decide what you want to do with it. But there are things that you can do as members to show that you are in favor, even though you're in this capacity. So I'll get that information to you. So.
Perfect. And then it will come down to calendaring, but I do want us to carve time out with our superintendent and Leisha for us to sit down and really hammer out the lists of what we want for FAQs. And maybe Bethany can take this meeting and the discussion we had and likely start with the list that we've already generated so far that we can bring to that discussion. And we really want to spend some time on that really soon so we can have our first iteration of FAQs as this goes onto our website. So I can't thank you both enough. And one of the things that you both highlighted all the best parts of our district, and the community feedback from the work that you did to lead this bond committee was universally incredible. And we as a board couldn't be more grateful for how you presented and positioned the district during all that time, including with dissenting voice. And we appreciate that you guys were intentional enough to not have it be everyone who's gung-ho, yes, let's do this. So thank you to both of you. Any other comments or commentary from your end?
No, just a additional thank you to Alicia Engels and Martin Turney, and then the many folks on our team that presented, helped facilitate and steer behind the scenes. It was many others as well. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next item on our agenda is monitoring report ends for life management and personal awareness.
I move the board accept the monitoring report ends for life management and personal awareness as presented.
Second.
Superintendent.
Great. Well, we have Dr. Dana Bailey joining us at the podium to do some brief starter comments as we have the board consider the monitoring report for ANS 4. We also had a work study prior to this board meeting on ANS 4 to discuss and work through, questions and the history and evolution of this ANS in context of all of our ANS, of course. And so it's always a good conversation to be able to have dialogue and hear that dialogue amongst the board in particular, to extend that into this meeting. So with that, I'll pass it to Dr. Bailey. And I know that the comments from the board will come forward from the work study as well.
Super. Thank you, School Board, Superintendent Talyuk, and our fabulous student representatives. Thank you for the opportunity to bring forward today ANS 4 on life management and personal awareness. This provides us an opportunity to reflect on the shared goal of school as a place where our students develop as people, growing in their individualities and their personal passions. There are several components of this monitoring report, including how the potential in students for creativity, innovation, accelerations, and personal passions is possible through interest-based opportunities both in school and after school, and how students who know themselves well can make choices in their educational path to play to their strengths. This monitoring report lends itself to perception data, how students experience our school system, and if they have sufficient opportunities to practice life skills such as grit, perseverance, taking informed risks, and using mistakes as moments to grow and develop. We also have a shared goal for our students to become safe and ethical members of a digital world, starting with the lessons in the elementary librarian sessions, the middle school curriculum on Win at Social, the Castle 7 standards, including protecting your privacy like you are famous, and having a relentless focus on the safety of our students when they're online. Add to this all of the adults who are trying to thread the needle on how to safeguard students from the negative aspects of digital influences while not shielding them or failing to equip them with the needed skills to be safe and ethical members of a digital world. The team is here to capture your feedback.
Perfect. Thank you. Wanted to open it up for when we start off first with just reflections on our work study. We may talk less about this formally here because we've spent already nearly an hour prior to the meeting having a robust discussion about this. And we are grateful to Superintendent and her cabinet for joining us in that discussion.
So I'm happy to get started with reflection, which is part of really what the work study was about, was a bit of reflecting. It's been very good to have taken these work studies prior to board meetings to spend time on a little bit more of a deep dive of what some of the policies or ends are, how the history of them a bit, and sort of how we each think about them, and then the associated monitoring, the associated evidence of their progress. And so the ends, which are interesting, at least for me, my reflection was they're really kind of the big picture of all of this, right? What are the things we really, at the end of the day, want for students at the end of the process? And for me, my reflection is now having a student that's gone through the whole cycle. I think it's given me a different perspective on what I hope for in the ends, what the wording in it means, and what evidence of what progress we're making towards those ends we're gaining. And so I think maybe my overall, after reflecting all that, is that my hope as we look at monitoring like this one is we can maybe take a bit of a longer view of what did we expect, maybe what were some of the milestones along the way for our students, and then how do we incorporate some of the kind of end feedback if our students are really able to achieve what we hope for them. So in this case, students living healthy, satisfying, and productive lives. And so while I fully understand some of the evidence that's in the monitoring report today, I think my reflection is that maybe one of the things I'd love to do is maybe look at some of the longer pictures, like, are we seeing students actually thrive? Are there points in the process we can test for resilience along the way, and start to also add in some of that information in addition to some of the more academic items that are there, or even the direct student surveys. The example I gave earlier was when you're thinking about resilience, can we start to look at where students maybe performed maybe less than they would have hoped, or we would have hoped for them in a particular course. Maybe that's a D, maybe that's an F in the class. And then what was the next step, retaking of those classes or some other method that we can look at to see how are they still trying to learn that content. So I think my reflection is maybe a bit more philosophical today on this one. But I know that's just the point in the cycle I am today.
Thank you. Dr. Taylor.
I just want to start off by saying how thankful I am for these work sessions. As a new board member, when exposed to these monitoring reports, I usually have a long laundry list of questions. And more importantly, it really exposes me to a whole bunch of work going on in the district that I'm not aware of. So very thankful for that. I would say it would be helpful for me in these monitoring reports, and this one in particular, this thought came to mind of just being a little bit more explicit as to what the emphases are. I mean, there's a lot of, there's 9 points here of subtopics covered in the report. I know the district's doing work in all of those areas, but for me, just a prioritization of where those real emphasis points are, being a little more explicit, that's really more of a comment on how the report itself is written. But that would help me to say, okay, this is where we're really trying to, focus moving forward. And then on that point too, I just want to say, I thought we had a really good discussion around the issue of personal finance as a potential requirement in our schools, knowing that we have a state requirement coming in the future, 2028, I think we decided, something like that. But whether it makes sense now, because that particular subject matter seems so closely tied to this ends about the idea of trying to prepare our kids for their challenges of their future and of course their financial health. So appreciated that conversation and hope that we can pick that up again in the near future.
Dr. Morales.
I did have a few things. I knew that I had thought of them, but I hadn't written them down around where the Healthy Youth Survey could be inserted more into this. So what I found was for 4.1 with relation to physical wellness, at least around eating breakfast, sleep, and physical activity. Although I am concerned, like, where would I put the fact that, 13% of our 12th grade students have consumed alcohol in the past 30 days. Actually, very much down from 10 years ago when it was 43%. But so where does substance use fall into that piece around physical wellness? And I know we linked to the standards for the health class, but what is the curriculum, around, especially around substance use? What we hear from students is that they know not to use, but they don't know why not to use. And so what are we doing about that? And then for 4.3, when it comes to digital technology, you do have, I think, like 4 different things listed there. I am wondering about adding the bullet point on screen time.
From
to
the
that
healthy use survey.
from the healthy use survey.
Thank you.
Naomi?
relation to Director Moraldo's point, I was looking at this yesterday, 4.3, it says that students will understand the opportunities and risks posed by digital technology and social media, including social emotional risks and safety impacts. On one of the middle school surveys, it states one of the questions was, how prepared do you feel when you encounter negative or harmful comments? I'm unsure as to the definition of preparedness. Is it like, how well are you expecting negative or harmful comments, or do you know what to do when you encounter those comments?
I will check in with Diana Eggers, who was here but isn't here now, and I will get back to you.
Thank you. For the for the Swedish mental health year-end report, is that something that they build and just send to you?
Yes.
Okay, because pie graphs are really not helpful.
I'm happy to take feedback to them. It's collaboration, so it's always a work in progress.
Director Quinn?
I want to second the earlier remarks too. The opportunity to have these discussions around the ends and also the ELs are helpful as a new board member. And I would say I came in a bit late to the conversation. I had a work commitment, but one of the areas that particularly resonated with me was 4.1, which is applying principles of sound physical health. And, I brought up the point around, could we maybe get some additional metrics in there right now? Now I think we have just the, kind of pass rate for PE, but specifically something that would kind of allude to our students coming away with the ability to value fitness, lifelong fitness. And I was reflecting on my own journey in K through 12 and looking at PE not coming away with that. And I think it's evolved because I see my own kids now in this Issaquah school district coming away from their PE classes with more excitement and actually seeing the connection to lifelong fitness and health. And so I know what's happening, but I'm not sure specifically what those metrics would be, but something that maybe could measure that beyond just the pass rate for PE, if that's possible.
For me, page 7, I mentioned it in the work study, but I'll just mention it here. I would like to see trend data for 3 years as we typically have been getting, as well as the differentiation between of the 518 students, how many of them are AP versus how many of them are IB. Same thing for the math, as far as I see IB, but I don't see actually how many of them are AP for calculus. That would be really helpful. And then since we've heard about personal finance and heard it mentioned by a teacher who came and spoke to us, I really want to know, of the number of 253, like how many students would requested it and weren't scheduled for it?
Oh, how many didn't get it and requested it? Yeah, I'm sure that's available. Happy to follow up on that. Would you like that for more than 1 year or just this year?
Just this year would be.
Okay.
And just since she's the one that came and spoke
Sure.
about it and about how limited it was. And I don't know, I know the master schedule is a puzzle that I don't ever want to have to solve.
Yeah.
But I would love to know what the impact is.
Certainly.
Siddharth?
Oh, so I'm just looking at the data for all the number of kids who take advanced classes, and I was it is pretty extensive, but I feel that I was wondering about a couple of the missing items, like for English, it's very interesting that you only focus on 11th grade and not on lower or higher grades. So I wonder what, like, why, like, you choose to do that. And then like, I think, I think the one thing that's missing is like social studies. Like, I don't really see any data for like advanced social studies classes like AP US history or AP European history or something like that. So, and then I think another thing which I was curious about is for math. Like, I know that there are a couple of kids who do go beyond calculus, and I was wondering like how many students that is as well.
Great, thank you.
On 4.9, again, staying with personal finance, do we still kind of coordinate engagement with junior achievement? So BizTown, I know my son, for instance, went to BizTown in 5th grade, and it was a wonderful experience. And I was actually speaking to someone this morning from junior achievement and talking about the engagement with districts. Are we still engaging junior achievement at all?
I think those field trips might have paused in COVID, like so
Okay.
many things did. I honestly don't know if 5th grade BizTown is happening right now, but I'd be happy to check in and follow up.
Yeah, I would love to see some of that if there's a way to see some of that data too, because I know we always receive great feedback on that.
Thank you.
So the one for me that stands out is really on 4.8 and the identify challenging personal goals and develop, evaluate, and implement plans to achieve them. The data associated, the findings associated with it really focus on the high school and beyond plan. And that just is challenging for me. I'm not, at least based on what I've seen and based on what you find here, I don't know that, I guess the selections within Zello equates to the spirit of that bullet and how we're really achieving, exposing students. I think it's a portion of it, but I think there's significantly more items that go on within our buildings that are getting to some of that between exposure to career in multiple formats and ways, internships that our students are doing. I think there's an opportunity to look at this in a much more robust way of, are students really ready, prepared? Are they able to implement a plan that's directed at what really happens? What is the spirit of it? To achieve their post-high school goals. And so that one for me feels like maybe a portion, and given some of the usage data that now I'm not finding, on average, like 2 times a year, like do we think that's great? Is that good? Is that what students in general in a bigger cohort would we expect? So for me, that one stands out as maybe not getting to the spirit of what that bullet point's about.
As we dig into this, for me to follow up on how Dr. Taylor kicked this off, the very last one about personal finance, I think I don't think it's the interpretation that I have question about, but it would be the evidence. And so for me, that one would be what percent of our seniors are taking personal finance, which if you look at the numbers you present in an earlier one, it's less than 20% of our seniors are doing that. And in general, when we look at the overall survey about how our students feel prepared, like they feel very prepared for lots of things, but one of our lowest marks year over year is personal finance. And so I think we need to be responsive to that. And that's what would be helpful for me to see. And then for me in page 13, for 4.7, be able to cooperate and collaborate within a diverse group of people in order to attain desired outcomes. I would like the fourth paragraph to be more inclusive. So that would be something would be immediate, even if this report was accepted by the board, I would want to see that edited and amended before it was actually accepted in its final form.
So I guess maybe my question is, I'm not personally feeling like I'm ready for that question of a final acceptance at this juncture, given the number of things we've gone through. I don't know about others on that point or how to properly note that item.
I mean, I think at this point, I mean, I think we've heard some feedback here and also through the work study that suggested there's further work to do, and that sometimes happens, right? When we put forward reports, and this is a very healthy and helpful discussion to see and align on evidence. I think because our ends can sometimes be very lofty, getting into sort of the detailed evidence kind of conversation is very helpful and very instructive. We don't wish to put forward evidence that we think is unhelpful, but we also want to put forward evidence that is going to help us engage in the right kind of conversation and questions, answers to questions or discussion of questions that allow us to make sure that we are continuing to prioritize and do good work on behalf of our students. So we hear that and we can take this as a turn to come back to the board and through our agenda planning work on that next time.
Yes. Do we see consensus building around that? Because then we would have to withdraw the motion, which is fine. And this for Matt and AJ, this has happened. I bet this happens once a year on average, where we go through this dialogue and then we're like, I think we're just probably not ready. So it's not that we're voting in disagreement about.
So
It's just we're saying that there's a lot.
Table the item until, would it be our June 13th?
I don't, we would want to let our superintendent let us know when.
At a time. At a future board meeting. So I move, we table this item until a future board meeting.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion to table? No. Do you feel like you have any more questions you need to ask of us?
No, I think the questions and the commentary was very helpful. So thank you. Dr. Bailey? Okay.
All those in favor, table?
Aye.
Aye. And again, do want to acknowledge our superintendent and your staff and all the work you do to put into this, and we appreciate it. And I think this would be an example of when we only get to discuss as a group when we're in public together. Sometimes robust discussion generates this, and we can't forecast that until we're together. So thank you for that. The next item on our agenda is legislative matters.
Nothing at this time that I'm aware of.
Oh, I didn't read through, but I will send a weekly federal update. So I will just go ahead and forward that to the board because there's information around appropriations, et cetera.
Yes, and I would say that we are getting close, and this is where we need to probably just sit down with you, AJ, on as we lead up towards General Assembly. Like this is the time where we start doing that conversations with our neighboring districts and colleagues about where we align and don't align and how we want to do that as a larger school district across our state.
Yeah, I have a couple of meetings set up with one of the folks from Lake Washington and also from Bellevue.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Marnie, did you have anything else federally? No. Alrighty. The next item is announcements and correspondence. Nope. Alrighty. Thank you, Bethany, for always keeping us straight. In general, I think the good practice is when you get a community response, it's just to you. I include Bethany in my response to that person. So then it becomes part of the record. And the next item is calendar and future agenda topics. I didn't see anything that we need to set except the one that I've just talked about. Okay. So you're gonna get out your handy dandy calendar because I want to find a time where we can get together and have a conversation and really hammer out some FAQ. So 60 to 90-minute window, ideally next week. I know I'll start with a lofty goal. And certainly students, if this is the time if you guys want to leave, because this may take a while calendaring, we totally support that because you have more important things to do than to listen to us painfully go through our calendars. Thank you for all your engagement tonight. We appreciate it. So it's probably easy to start with days you can't do would be the easiest ones to knock off. And ideally, we'd be looking for a time within the workday for our staff. That may not be possible, but I'd like to first try and see if we can find time within our workday.
What's the window? Like as soon as possible or?
Next week, I would like to start.
Next week.
Yeah.
Could we do it via video?
I
Would
think
be my preference.
I think some people could
Or we
come in
option.
video.
Yeah.
Hybrid format.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, then that frees up a lot for me. Well, not a lot, but it gives more options. I'd prefer not
Memorial Day.
Tuesday. So Monday, Memorial Day, I'd prefer not Tuesday.
Okay.
Thursday. Thursday afternoon works for you.
I would say that
Are we all coming to the CTE showcase
That's
next
right.
Thursday at
Yeah.
4?
I am
I am too.
Because I was not.
Where is it physically?
here.
Here,
In this building?
yeah, from 4 to 5, right?
Oh, opportunity.
So we could do before. After.
I can do hybrid that day. I'm not coming here.
Okay, so could we do 3?
3 I
O'clock?
could do.
In the
Yes.
boardroom, for those of us that are here, perhaps.
Well, we
Or
can
probably
just do we would do our
our
cover.
Oh, that's what I meant. I meant.
Yeah.
I could do, I could do 3 o'clock and I might
You
be able
know,
to make it in
start
person, but if
and-
we could do hybrid, yeah, I could
start.
call in or
Yeah.
something. Okay, yeah, that would work.
Would
As a public meeting? Sorry, I'm just tracking right now. Okay, great. I'm just also looking for nods from Martin and Leisha, we're all cross-checking right now.
right, that's why.
Okay.
The big
I
calendar.
heard 3 o'clock on
Next
Thursday.
Thursday at 3 p.m.
Yeah, well, good. Look at this, nonverbal signals in the back of the room.
That's why I was letting her
Yeah.
know ahead of time at that agenda topic, so she knew she would.
Yes,
probably
we're-
stay to calendar with us.
Yes, that works for us.
Okay. So if we could get that initial list generated to us by Tuesday morning, or actually Tuesday afternoon is fine. Would be fine. End of day Tuesday, would that work? Perfect. So we'll call this a work study for bond FAQs, I guess, or not bond planning anymore. Yeah, sure. Whatever it is. Okay, thank you guys so much for that. I think that will be really important that we get ahead of this and have that start to fill in, because we wanna lead on this narrative, and we have a very small window to get and take that lead. So,
Yeah.
okay. Anything else for calendar and future agenda topics? Nope. Hearing none.